never imagined my own parents would look at my 12-year-old daughter writhing in pain with her leg bent at an unnatural angle and say those words, "We don't have time for this drama, Julie." Emma had fallen from the old oak tree in their backyard during our Sunday visit, and the crack we all heard made my stomach turn. But nothing prepared me for what happened next. My father checked his watch. My mother rolled her eyes, and my brother Jake just shrugged. The summer afternoon had started so perfectly. Emma had been excited about visiting her grandparents' house, the place where I grew up with its sprawling backyard and that magnificent oak tree I used to climb as a child. She'd worn her favorite purple sneakers and jean shorts, her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail that bounced as she ran toward the tree the moment we arrived. "Be careful up there, sweetheart," I called out, settling into a patio chair with my iced tea. My parents sat across from me at the wrought iron table, while Jake lounged in the hammock scrolling through his phone. The conversation drifted to Jake's recent promotion at the marketing firm. My mother beamed with pride as he described his new corner office and the substantial raise that came with it. My father nodded approvingly, mentioning how Jake had always been the ambitious one in the family. That's when it happened. A sharp crack echoed across the yard, followed immediately by Emma's terrified scream. I watched in horror as my daughter plummeted from about 12 feet up her body, twisting awkwardly as she tried to grab branches on the way down. She hit the ground with a sickening thud that made my heart stop. I sprinted across the lawn faster than I thought possible, my nursing training taking over, even as maternal panic flooded through me. Emma lay on her side, tears streaming down her face, her right leg bent at an angle that made bile rise in my throat. The bone hadn't broken through the skin, but the deformity below her knee was unmistakable. "Baby, don't move," I said, dropping to my knees beside her. "I'm right here. You're going to be okay." My hands trembled as I checked her pulse, and breathing, then carefully examined the injury without moving her leg. The area was already beginning to swell, and Emma's face had gone pale beneath her summer tan. "Mom, Dad, call 911. I shouted over my shoulder. "She's broken her leg." But when I glanced back at the patio, my family hadn't moved. My mother sipped her wine, shaking her head slowly. My father glanced at his watch again, frowning. Jake had propped himself up on one elbow in the hammock, but made no move to help. "Oh, Julie, always so dramatic," my mother called out. "Children fall from trees all the time. She probably just twisted her ankle." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Can't you see her leg? Look at the angle. We need to get her to the emergency room now." My father stood up leisurely, walking over with the kind of casual pace you'd use approaching a neighbor's barbecue. He peered down at Emma for all of 3 seconds before waving his hand dismissively. "She's fine. Kids are resilient. Remember when Jake broke his toe playing soccer? He walked it off like a champ." "A toe is not the same as a leg," I practically screamed, cradling Emma's head in my lap as she whimpered. "And Jake was 16, not 12. My brother finally ambled over, still clutching his phone. He glanced at Emma's leg and shrugged. "I mean, it looks kind of swollen, but we've got those theater tickets for the Broadway touring company tonight. You know how expensive those were." "Theater tickets." I stared at them in disbelief. "My daughter has a broken bone." "You don't know that for certain," my mother interjected, joining the circle around us. "You always were too emotional, Julie. This is exactly why Richard left, you know. You blow everything out of proportion." The mention of my ex-husband felt like a slap across the face. Richard and I had divorced 8 months ago, and while it hadn't been easy, we'd managed to keep things civil for Emma's sake. But my mother never missed an opportunity to suggest it was somehow my fault. "This has nothing to do with my divorce," I said through gritted teeth. "This is about getting Emma medical attention. She needs x-rays and probably a cast." "Well, we don't have time for some 6-hour emergency room wait," my father declared with finality. "We have plans. If you're so concerned, give her some ice and prop it up. She'll be fine by morning." Emma's quiet crying had turned to soft moans, and I could see her trying to be brave even through her pain. My baby girl was suffering, and my own family stood around debating theater tickets and dinner plans. "Please," I begged, looking from one face to another. "Just let me borrow a car. I'll take her myself." "Your car is right there in the driveway," Jake pointed out with a smirk. "With a dead battery, which you all know because I had to get a ride here with Mrs. Patterson from down the street," I reminded them. "That's why I asked Dad to look at it today." "Well, that's not our problem," my mother said, smoothing her linen pants. "You need to learn to maintain your vehicle properly. Another example of how you've let things slide since the divorce." I wanted to scream that I'd let things slide because I was working double shifts at the hospital to make ends meet while single parenting and couldn't afford a new battery until my next paycheck. But Emma needed me calm and focused. "Then call an ambulance," I said simply. "Do you have any idea how much that costs?" My father scoffed. "Thousands of dollars for a 10-minute ride, and your insurance probably won't cover it if it's not life-threatening. A broken leg is serious. You're overreacting because you're too emotional since the divorce." My mother said, her tone suggesting this was a fact rather than the cruel accusation it was. "You've been looking for attention, and now you're using Emma to get it. It's unhealthy, Julie." Jake actually laughed as he typed something on his phone. "Mom's right. You've been super needy lately. All those calls about needing help with Emma, crying about money. Maybe this is just another cry for attention." I looked down at Emma, whose face was contorted in pain, her leg visibly deformed, and felt a cold rage settle over me. But I couldn't afford to lose control, not when my daughter needed me. "Fine," I said quietly. "If you won't help us get to the hospital, at least help me get her inside where she can lie down properly." "Actually," my father checked his watch yet again. "We should get going on that family walk to the lake. The fresh air will do everyone good, especially Emma. Help clear her head from all this fussing." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard, but the expectant looks on all three of their faces told me I hadn't. They actually expected Emma to walk to the lake with a broken leg. The twist of this nightmare was that they genuinely seemed to believe they were being reasonable, that I was the one failing as a parent by wanting to seek medical attention for my injured child. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She can't walk. Look at her leg." My mother clapped her hands together as if settling the matter. "Nonsense. A little movement will help prevent stiffness. Come on, Emma dear, up you go." Emma looked at me with wide, frightened eyes, tears still streaming down her cheeks. "Mom, I can't. It hurts so bad." "I know, baby," I whispered, stroking her hair. "Let me carry you inside." "Absolutely not," my father's voice boomed across the yard. "You'll make her soft, Julie. The girl needs to learn that life doesn't stop for every little bump and bruise. When I was her age, I worked the farm with a separated shoulder for 2 weeks before anyone even noticed." Jake pocketed his phone and grabbed Emma's arm. "Come on, kiddo, let's see you tough it out like a real Morrison." "Don't touch her," I snapped, batting his hand away. My brother's eyes narrowed. "See, this is what I mean. You baby her. No wonder she's crying over a little sprain." "It's not a sprain. Can none of you see the obvious deformity in her leg?" "What I see," my mother said coolly, "is a woman who's been struggling since her husband left, trying to make everyone else responsible for her problems. We're going on our walk, Julie. You and Emma can join us, or you can sit here and pout. Your choice." They turned toward the trail that led through the woods to the small lake about 1.5 miles away. It was a walk we'd done hundreds of times throughout my childhood, but never with a broken bone. Emma tried to sit up, gasping in pain as the movement jostled her leg. "Mom, I don't think I can stand." I positioned myself beside her, supporting most of her weight. "I've got you, sweetheart. Let's just get you to the porch." "No," my father called back. "If you're coming, you're walking the whole way. She needs to learn to push through discomfort." "This isn't discomfort," I shouted. "This is a medical emergency." Jake had already started down the trail, but he turned back with an exasperated sigh. "God, Jules, when did you become such a helicopter parent? No wonder Richard started working late all the time." Another cruel jab about my failed marriage, and this time Emma heard it. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, though whether from physical pain or emotional hurt, I couldn't tell. "Please, Grandma," Emma called out weakly. "My leg really hurts. Can't we go to the doctor?" My mother paused at the trailhead, and for a moment I thought maternal instinct might override whatever insanity had possessed them. But she simply adjusted her sun hat and said, "Your mother has filled your head with weakness, dear. A Morrison woman doesn't cry over every little injury. Now come along." I had two choices: stay behind with Emma, and no way to get her help, or follow my family and hope I could convince them along the way. The property was isolated, the nearest neighbors a quarter-mile away, and Mrs. Patterson had long since left after dropping us off. "Baby, I'm going to help you stand okay," I said softly to Emma. "We'll go very slowly." "I can't put any weight on it," she whimpered. "I know, lean on me, I'll support you." Getting her upright was agony. Emma screamed when her injured leg touched the ground, the sound piercing through the summer afternoon like a knife. My parents didn't even turn around. We began the torturous journey. Each step was excruciating for Emma, her face pale and sweaty with pain. I bore as much of her weight as possible, but at 12 years old and already 5 feet 2 inches, she wasn't exactly light. My back and shoulders burned with the effort. The trail was uneven, full of roots and rocks that seemed to catch Emma's injured leg no matter how carefully we moved. 20 yards in, she vomited from the pain, doubling over and crying harder. "That's enough," I called ahead. "She's throwing up. We need to turn back." "Motion sickness," my mother replied without looking back. "Fresh air will settle her stomach." Jake had his phone out, and I watched in horror as he turned around, pointing it at us. The unmistakable sound of video recording filled the air. "Jake, what are you doing?" I demanded. "This is hilarious," he chuckled. "Emma doing the zombie walk. My followers are going to love this." "Don't you dare record her." "Relax, it's just for fun. When you're being dramatic about a twisted ankle. Perfect caption." "It's not twisted," Emma sobbed. "Uncle Jake, please, it hurts so much." But Jake just laughed, keeping his camera trained on us as Emma struggled forward. "Oh, this is gold. Sarah's gonna think this is hysterical." Sarah was his girlfriend of 6 months, someone I'd only met twice at family dinners. The thought of strangers laughing at my daughter's agony made my blood boil. "You post that video and I'll sue you," I threatened. "With what money?" Jake shot back. "Last I heard, you could barely afford Emma's school supplies." My financial struggles were no secret in the family, but having them thrown in my face while my daughter suffered felt particularly cruel. Richard paid child support, but it barely covered half our expenses, and my nursing salary stretched thin in our high-cost area. We continued our death march through the woods. My father pointed out various plants and birds, as if this were a nature walk rather than torture. My mother critiqued my parenting at every opportunity. "You know, if you'd enrolled her in sports, like I suggested, she'd be tougher," she observed as Emma stumbled over a root. "But no, you let her waste time with art classes and reading." "She's creative," I panted, struggling under Emma's weight. "Creative doesn't build character. Look at Jake, 3-sport athlete in high school. That's why he's successful now." Jake preened at the compliment, still filming intermittently. "Remember when I played the whole basketball tournament with a sprained wrist? Didn't tell anyone until after we won the championship." "That's the Morrison spirit," my father agreed. "Not this whimpering and carrying on." Emma had gone quiet except for small whimpers with each step. Her face was gray and I could feel her trembling against me. The swelling in her leg had increased visibly, straining against her sock. "She's going into shock," I announced. "We need to stop." "Drama, drama, drama," my mother sang out. "Honestly, Julie, you should have been an actress instead of a nurse." The lake finally came into view after what felt like hours, but was probably 45 minutes. Emma collapsed the moment we reached the shore, unable to take another step. Her injured leg had swollen to nearly twice its normal size. "There, see," my father said triumphantly. "She made it just fine. A little perseverance goes a long way." I knelt beside Emma, checking her pulse. It was rapid and thready. Her skin felt clammy, and when I gently touched her leg, she didn't even respond, too exhausted from pain to react. "We need to get back now," I said firmly, "and then straight to the hospital." "Oh, we're not done yet," my mother announced. "We always do the full loop around the lake, another 2 miles or so." "Are you insane?" The word burst out before I could stop it. "She can't walk another 2 miles. Can't," my father's eyes flashed dangerously, "or won't. There's a difference, Julie, one you never learned apparently." Jake had put his phone away and was skipping stones across the water. I mean, if she really can't walk, maybe Julie should carry her. Good workout for those nurse muscles. I've been practically carrying her already. "Practically isn't actually," my mother observed. "If you're so concerned, then yes, carry her properly. But we're completing our walk." I looked at my daughter pale and suffering on the rocky shore, then at my family casually enjoying the summer day as if nothing were wrong. The twist wasn't just their cruelty, it was their complete conviction that they were being reasonable, that I was the problem. Jake had documented Emma's struggle not with concern, but for entertainment, revealing a callousness I'd never fully recognized before. They weren't just dismissive of her pain, they were enjoying their power over us. "Fine," I said quietly, "but when she ends up with permanent damage from this, remember this moment. Remember that you chose a walk over a child's well-being." My mother laughed a tinkling sound that felt like glass shards. So melodramatic, Richard really did dodge a bullet. I gathered Emma into my arms, my back screaming in protest, and prepared for the longest 2 miles of our lives. As we started around the lake, Jake began humming "Bridge Over Troubled Water," and my parents chuckled at his cleverness. But I didn't respond. I was done pleading. Something had shifted in me watching them torture my daughter for their amusement. I wouldn't shout or beg anymore. I had a different plan, forming one they wouldn't see coming. They'd push too far, and soon they'd learn exactly what this over-dramatic mother was capable of when her child was threatened. The return journey felt endless. Each step sent shooting pain through my lower back as I struggled to carry Emma while navigating the uneven trail. Her arms hung limply around my neck, and she'd stopped crying, which worried me more than her earlier sobs. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat stung my eyes, but I couldn't wipe it away without risking dropping my daughter. My family strolled ahead as if on a casual Sunday walk. Jake pointed out a hawk circling overhead. My mother picked wildflowers humming to herself. My father checked his phone periodically, likely monitoring the time to ensure they wouldn't miss their precious theater performance. By the time we reached the house, my legs shook with exhaustion. I carefully lowered Emma onto the porch steps, my muscles screaming in relief. Her injured leg had swollen grotesquely, the skin stretched tight and discolored. "Well, that was refreshing," my mother announced, fanning herself with her hand. "Nothing like a family walk to build appetite. Jake helped me start dinner preparations. Sarah will be here soon." Emma suddenly lurched forward and vomited again, this time bringing up bile since she hadn't eaten since breakfast. Her whole body shook with the effort. "That's it," I announced, standing despite my trembling legs. "We're going to the hospital. Right now." I headed for the house to retrieve my purse and call an Uber regardless of the cost, but my father stepped in front of the door, blocking my path. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "To get my things. We're leaving." "No, you're not." He held up my car keys, the ones I'd given him earlier, to look at my dead battery. "You're not going anywhere until after Jake's girlfriend arrives and we have a civilized dinner." "Give me my keys." "So you can drive that broken down car?" "I don't think so. You'll stay put until we say otherwise." I reached for the keys, but he held them high above his head like we were children on a playground. "Dad, this isn't a game. Emma needs medical attention." "What Emma needs," my mother interjected, appearing beside him, is a mother who doesn't panic at every little thing. You're going to give that child an anxiety disorder with all your fussing. Look at her. I gestured wildly at Emma, who sat hunched on the steps, her face gray with pain. Her leg is deformed. She's vomiting. She can barely stay conscious. Exhaustion from the walk, my father dismissed. Some food and rest will sort her right out. Jake emerged from the house with a beer settling into a porch chair. Besides Jules, if you make a scene when Sarah gets here, it'll be super awkward. She's meeting the family for the first time. I don't care about your girlfriend. The words exploded out of me. I care about my daughter's broken leg. Alleged broken leg, my mother corrected. Really, Julie, your hysterics are becoming tiresome. This is exactly the kind of behavior that drives people away. First Richard, and now you're trying to alienate us too. My hands clenched into fists. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to fight, to grab those keys and run. But my father was 6 feet 2 inches and still strong at 65. I couldn't physically overpower him. Please, I tried once more, hating the begging tone in my voice. Just let us go. I'll come back after the hospital. I'll reimburse you for any dinner expenses my absence causes. With what money? Jake laughed. Last week you were crying to Mom about not affording Emma's field trip. That's different. Is it? My mother's eyes glinted with something cold. You can't provide properly for Emma Julie. You can't maintain a marriage, keep a car running, or even handle a minor injury without hysteria. Perhaps it's time to consider what's really best for her. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm evening. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, she said airily. Just observing that Emma might benefit from a more stable environment, one with proper resources and level-headed guardians. If you're threatening to call CPS because I want to take my injured child to the hospital. CPS. My father laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Who said anything about CPS? We're family, Julie. Family handles things internally. Emma moaned softly from the steps, and I turned to check on her. The movement of her injured leg as she shifted made her cry out the sound, weak but piercing. Mommy, please, she whispered. It hurts so bad. I think I'm going to be sick again. I knelt beside her, smoothing her sweat-dampened hair. I know, baby. I'm going to get you help, I promise. No, you're not, my father stated flatly. Not until after dinner. If you try to leave, I'll call the police and report the car stolen. It's in my name. Remember, I co-signed your loan. My heart sank. He was right. In the chaos of the divorce, when my credit was shot, my father had co-signed my auto loan. Technically, he had as much legal right to the vehicle as I did. Then call an ambulance, I demanded. Already discussed. Too expensive for dramatics. I'll call them myself. I reached for my phone, but Jake was quicker. He snatched it from my back pocket where I'd stashed it during the walk. Jake, give that back. He tossed it to my father, who pocketed it with my keys. You're being irrational, Julie. We can't have you making unnecessary emergency calls that will embarrass the family. Embarrass the family. I stared at them in disbelief. My daughter has a broken bone. Alleged, my mother repeated. And even if true, which I doubt, children break bones all the time, they heal. But reputation, that takes much longer to repair. What reputation? What are you talking about? The three of them exchanged glances, and something passed between them that made my stomach drop. We've been discussing your situation, my mother said carefully. Your struggles since the divorce, your emotional instability, your inability to provide properly for Emma. We're concerned, my father added, though his tone suggested anything but concern, about Emma's well-being in your care. Jake's been documenting things, my mother continued, for Emma's sake, in case we need to intervene. I looked at my brother, who avoided my eyes. Documenting. Like that video of her walking in pain. Among other things, he muttered. What other things? Your meltdown at Emma's birthday when you couldn't afford the party she wanted, my mother listed. You're crying fits when you drop her off here. The times you've called begging for money. I never begged, I asked for one loan which I'm paying back. The details don't matter, my father said. What matters is the pattern, a pattern of instability that might require us to step in for Emma's protection. The full scope of their threat crystallized. They weren't just denying Emma medical care, they were building a case against me. The twist revealed itself in sickening clarity. They'd been planning this, collecting evidence, waiting for an opportunity. You're trying to take her from me, I whispered. Such dramatic language, my mother tutted. We're simply prepared to do what's best for our granddaughter if her mother proves incapable. Emma whimpered again, trying to adjust her position on the hard steps. The movement made her injured leg shift, and she cried out in pain. See, I pointed at her, this is what you're documenting, denying a child medical care. We're documenting a mother who can't distinguish between minor injuries and emergencies, my father corrected, who becomes hysterical at the slightest provocation, who lacks the resources and emotional stability to parent effectively. Jake would make an excellent guardian, my mother mused. Successful, stable, two-parent household once he marries Sarah. The courts love that kind of thing. Jake shifted uncomfortably but didn't disagree. The brother who'd once helped me build blanket forts and shared midnight snacks during thunderstorms was now complicit in stealing my child. You planned this, I said, the pieces clicking together. The dead battery wasn't coincidence. You made sure I'd be trapped here. Paranoid thinking, my father noted loudly as if speaking to an invisible recorder. Another sign of instability. I'm calling the police, I announced, though I had no phone. To report what? My mother asked sweetly. That grandparents took their granddaughter for a walk, that we're having a family dinner, that we're concerned about our daughter's mental state, that you're denying medical care. Are we, she gestured at Emma. We see a tired child with a minor injury. You see a catastrophe requiring emergency intervention. Who sounds more reasonable? A car engine approached and Jake jumped up. That's Sarah, everyone act normal. Normal? I nearly screamed. Nothing about this is normal. Julie. My father's voice carried a warning. You will behave civilly during dinner, or there will be consequences. Emma stays here, you stay here, and we all have a pleasant evening. After Sarah leaves, we can reassess. And if Emma's leg gets worse, it won't, my mother said confidently, because there's nothing seriously wrong with it. You've worked yourself into hysterics over nothing as usual. I looked at my daughter, pale and suffering, then at my family, united in their delusion or cruelty. I couldn't tell which anymore. They'd backed me into a corner, but they'd made one mistake. They thought I'd continue playing by their rules, that I'd beg and plead and ultimately comply. Sarah's car pulled into the driveway, a small blue sedan with a university parking sticker. Through the windshield, I could see a young woman checking her reflection in the mirror, unaware she was about to walk into a nightmare disguised as a family dinner. Fine, I said quietly. I'll play along. But if anything happens to Emma because of your neglect— Threats now, my father asked. Jake, did you hear your sister threaten us? I heard, Jake confirmed, though he looked uneasy. I forced myself to take a deep breath. Emma needed me calm and thinking clearly. My family had revealed their true intentions, their willingness to use my daughter's pain as leverage in some sick power play. But they'd also shown their hand too early. They thought they held all the cards, but they'd underestimated one thing: the lengths a mother would go to protect her child. I need to get Emma comfortable, I said evenly. May I at least take her inside to lie down? Guest room, my mother allowed. But don't think about trying to sneak out. We'll be watching. As I helped Emma to her feet, supporting her weight, once again, she whispered so quietly, only I could hear, Mommy, I'm scared. I know, baby, I whispered back, but I'm going to fix this. Trust me. Inside, I could hear my family greeting Jake's girlfriend with warm enthusiasm, their voices bright and welcoming. The contrast to how they'd treated Emma made me sick, but I wouldn't let anger cloud my judgment. They'd made their move, revealing their plan to paint me as an unfit mother. Now it was time to make mine. I settled Emma onto the guest room bed as gently as possible, arranging pillows to elevate her injured leg. The room felt suffocating with its faded floral wallpaper and the musty smell of rarely opened windows. Emma's face contorted with each tiny movement, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "Let me look at it again, sweetheart," I whispered carefully, rolling up her shorts to expose more of the injury. What I saw made my nursing instincts scream. The swelling had progressed dramatically, the skin now stretched tight, with a purple-blue discoloration spreading from below her knee halfway down her shin. The deformity was even more pronounced, clearly indicating a displaced fracture. "Mom, am I going to lose my leg?" Emma's voice trembled with fear only a 12-year-old could express so plainly. "No, baby, absolutely not," I assured her while mentally cataloging symptoms that suggested compromised circulation. "But we need to get you proper care very soon." Through the thin walls, I could hear laughter from the dining room. Sarah's bright voice carried as she thanked my mother for the invitation. The normalcy of it felt obscene while Emma suffered just rooms away. I pulled out my phone, remembering too late that Jake had taken it. But then I spotted my old tablet on the guest room dresser, the one I'd left here months ago for Emma to use during visits. My parents had forgotten about it, dismissing technology they didn't understand. Working quickly, I connected to their Wi-Fi and opened the camera app. First, I took detailed photos of Emma's leg from multiple angles, ensuring the timestamp showed clearly. The swelling, the deformity, the bruising already forming. I documented it all. "What are you doing, Mom?" Emma asked weakly. "Making sure we have evidence, baby. Can you tell me what hurts on a scale of 1 to 10? 11, she whispered without hesitation. Maybe 12. I started a video recording, keeping my voice low and clinical. Patient is 12-year-old female, approximately 3 hours post-injury from fall. Visible deformity indicating displaced fracture of the tibia. Extensive swelling suggesting possible compartment syndrome developing. Patient reports severe pain, has experienced multiple episodes of emesis. Medical intervention urgently required. After stopping the recording, I quickly typed a message to Marcus, my friend, who worked as an EMT. I attached several photos. Marcus emergency. Emma fell from tree, obvious tibial fracture. Family refusing to allow medical treatment. Currently trapped at parents' house. Please advise. His response came within minutes. Julie, that needs immediate attention. Swelling suggests possible compartment syndrome, can become limb-threatening fast. How long since injury? 3 hours. They made her walk over 3 miles on it. What, get her to ER immediately. I can meet you there. They won't let us leave. Have my keys and phone. I'm calling police for wellness check. Address. I hesitated, then typed my parents' address. Another message appeared almost instantly. Wait, that swelling pattern. Julie, if circulation is compromised, you have maybe 6 to 8 hour window before permanent damage. After that, looking at possible amputation. Not trying to scare you, but this is serious. My hands shook as I screenshot his messages. Emma's leg could be permanently damaged because of my family's cruelty. Mommy. Emma's voice was growing weaker. I feel really dizzy. I checked her pulse. Rapid and weak. Classic signs of shock setting in. Through the door, I heard my mother's laugh ring out at something Sarah had said. Moving to the closet, I searched for anything useful. Behind old coats, I found a box of my high school things my mother had saved. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was my old diary. But more importantly, tucked in the pages were duplicate keys I'd hidden as a teenager, including one to my father's study. Emma, honey, I need to step out for just 2 minutes. Keep your leg very still, okay? She nodded weakly, and I slipped into the hallway. The dinner conversation provided cover as I crept to my father's study. Inside, his desk lamp illuminated neat stacks of papers. What I found in the second drawer made my blood run cold. A folder labeled Emma, Custody Considerations, contained printed emails between my parents and Jake, dating back 4 months. They discussed my deteriorating mental state, my financial instability, and strategies for intervention when the time is right. Jake had been sending them photos of me crying in my car after a particularly hard day, Emma in hand-me-down clothes, our small apartment's cramped conditions. Most damning was a draft legal document appointing Jake as Emma's temporary guardian, citing mother's emotional instability and inability to provide proper medical judgment. It was dated 2 weeks ago before today's injury. My hands trembled with rage as I photographed every page. They'd been planning this, waiting for an opportunity to paint me as an unfit mother. Emma's injury wasn't the cause. It was the trigger they'd been hoping for. I found more in my mother's correspondence emails to other family members expressing concern about my parenting carefully crafted to sound caring while planting seeds of doubt. She'd even contacted Emma's school, checking in on her granddaughter's well-being in ways that suggested problems at home. A legal pad showed my father's notes from a conversation with a family law attorney. Document everything. Build pattern of instability, emergency custody possible with right evidence, Jake Strong candidate as guardian. I photographed it all my tablet filling with evidence of their conspiracy. Then I spotted something that made my heart skip a printed email from Jake to someone named Derek, apparently a friend who worked in social services, asking about hypothetical custody scenarios and what would constitute parental neglect. Footsteps in the hallway made me freeze. I quickly closed the drawers and slipped behind the door as Jake passed, heading to the bathroom. Once clear, I hurried back to Emma. She looked worse if possible. The discoloration had spread and she could barely keep her eyes open. Just a little longer, baby. I promised, though I had no idea how I'd keep that promise. Opening the tablet's email app, I created a new message to my divorce attorney, Ellen, who'd become a friend through our proceedings. I attached every photo and video explaining the situation in detail. Then I sent copies to Marcus, my supervisor at the hospital, and even Richard, my ex-husband. If something happened to me, others would have the evidence. Digging deeper into the desk photos I'd taken, I noticed something else. My father had been researching my finances, somehow obtaining copies of my bank statements. Sticky notes marked every large withdrawal or late payment. My privacy invaded my struggles, weaponized against me. Sarah's voice drifted through the walls, asking if Emma was joining them for dinner. I heard my mother's smooth response about Emma being a bit under the weather and needing rest. If only she knew the child she was asking about lay suffering in the next room. I opened a voice recording app on the tablet, hiding it under a pillow but positioned to catch sound. If anyone came to check on us, I'd have audio evidence of their neglect. Emma stirred, her face flushed with fever beginning to set in, another dangerous sign. "Mom, I don't feel good. Everything's spinning." "I know, sweetheart. Help is coming." I had no idea if that was true, but I needed her to hold on. Through the thin walls, I heard chairs scraping. Dinner was ending. Soon they'd expect me to perform the happy family charade while my daughter deteriorated. I quickly sent one more message, this time to 3 nurse colleagues from my unit. "Emergency, at parents' house. They're preventing me from getting Emma medical care for serious fracture. May need witness statements later. Please screenshot this message." All 3 responded immediately with concern and offers to help. Patricia even offered to drive over, but I warned her my family would just turn her away. My tablet buzzed with a response from Ellen. "My attorney, this is medical neglect and endangerment. Document everything. If they don't let you leave within the hour, I'm filing emergency motions. Also, those custody documents are illegally obtained financial info. We can use this." A knock at the door made me quickly hide the tablet under the mattress. "Julie." Sarah's voice, not my family's. "Your mom asked me to check if you two need anything." I opened the door to find a young woman with kind eyes and curly auburn hair. She looked genuinely concerned, not part of whatever game my family was playing. "We're fine, thank you," I managed. But Sarah peered past me, her expression changing when she spotted Emma on the bed. Her teacher training kicked in immediately. "Oh my goodness, what happened to her leg?" She pushed past me gently, her face paling as she took in the injury. This child needs a hospital immediately. Why is she here? My family doesn't think it's serious, I said carefully. Sarah turned to me with wide eyes. Not serious, I can see the bone displacement from here. I'm a mandated reporter. I can't ignore this. Where's your phone? We need to call 911 right now. A spark of hope ignited in my chest, an ally unexpected but desperately needed. But before I could respond, my mother appeared in the doorway. Sarah, dear, don't let Julie alarm you. She tends to overreact. Emma just has a minor sprain. Sarah looked between us, then back at Emma's leg. Her expression hardened in a way that suggested she'd encountered situations like this before in her teaching career. Mrs. Morrison, with all due respect, that's not a sprain. That child needs immediate medical attention, and as an educator, I'm required by law to ensure she gets it. My mother's smile turned icy. I think you misunderstand the situation. I understand perfectly, Sarah interrupted, pulling out her phone. And I'm calling emergency services now. The twist I'd never seen coming Jake's girlfriend, the stranger at our family dinner, might be the key to saving Emma. My family had invited a mandated reporter into their home while actively committing medical neglect. Their arrogance in assuming everyone would fall in line had backfired spectacularly. My mother's face cycled through emotions before settling on controlled fury. Jake, she called sharply, please come collect your girlfriend. She's overstepping. But Sarah was already dialing, and I saw my chance. With everyone distracted by this unexpected rebellion, I could finally act. The secret documentation I'd gathered would prove crucial, but first I needed to get Emma to safety. Thank you, I whispered to Sarah as footsteps thundered down the hallway. She squeezed my shoulder briefly. No child should suffer like this. I've got your back. Jake burst into the room, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Sarah, what are you doing? Put the phone down. I'm calling 911, Sarah said calmly, holding the phone to her ear. Your niece needs immediate medical attention. Cancel that call right now, my father commanded from the doorway, his presence filling the small space. This is a family matter. Sarah's eyes widened slightly at his tone, but she stood her ground. Sir, I'm a mandated reporter. I see a child with an untreated injury that's been neglected for hours. I have a legal obligation. Jake snatched the phone from her hand and ended the call. You're embarrassing me in front of my family. Jake. Sarah stared at him in shock. That little girl needs help. Look at her leg. It's fine, Jake insisted, though he carefully avoided looking at Emma. My sister is just being dramatic like always. My mother stepped forward, her voice honeyed with false concern. Sarah, dear, you don't understand the dynamics here. Julie has been struggling since her divorce. She seeks attention through manufactured crises. We're trying to help her, but enabling this behavior only makes it worse. Sarah looked between them, all confusion and disbelief warring on her face. But then her expression shifted to something harder, more determined. She was seeing my family's true colors, and she didn't like what she saw. I need to leave, Sarah announced. Jake, we need to talk outside now. Baby, come on, Jake started, but she was already pushing past him. This was it, our chance. With everyone focused on the drama between Jake and Sarah, I quickly lifted Emma into my arms, but my father blocked the doorway. Put her down, Julie, you're not going anywhere. That's when I made a decision that surprised even me. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply nodded and gently placed Emma back on the bed. You're right, I said quietly. I'm overreacting. I apologize. My parents exchanged surprised glances. My mother's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but my father looked pleased at my apparent capitulation. Finally, some sense, he said. Now let's go smooth things over with Sarah before she does something foolish. Of course, I agreed. Just let me make Emma comfortable first. Maybe get her some ice for the swelling. That's more like it, my mother approved. See, when you're calm and rational, everything works better. They filed out, heading toward the front door where Jake and Sarah were having what sounded like a heated argument. I waited until their voices faded, then sprang into action. First, I grabbed my tablet and sent a quick message to Marcus. Sarah tried to call 911, but they stopped her. She's a teacher, mandated reporter. They're all outside now. What do I do? His response was immediate. I'm already on my way with my partner. Sent wellness check request. ETA 15 minutes. Can you get Emma outside? I looked at my daughter, who was barely conscious now. The window in the guest room was painted shut, years of neglect sealing it closed. But the bathroom window down the hall might work. Emma, baby, I need you to be very brave for a few more minutes, I whispered. She nodded weakly, trusting me completely, even through her pain. That trust gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. I could hear Sarah's car starting outside, then Jake's voice pleading with her not to leave. Perfect. They were all distracted. I scooped Emma up my back, protesting but adrenaline overriding the pain. The bathroom window was small but functional. It opened onto the side yard, hidden from the front driveway by thick hedges. I managed to get it open, then carefully maneuvered Emma through, supporting her weight as she slid down to the grass. Following her was awkward, but desperation made me flexible. We were outside, but now what Emma couldn't walk and carrying her would be too slow if they noticed our escape. That's when I remembered the old wheelbarrow in the garden, shed the one my mother used for her prized roses. I lifted Emma again, staggering toward the shed. Inside, beyond the wheelbarrow, I spotted something even better, the utility wagon my father used for yard work. It was sturdy with high sides and, most importantly, had wheels in good condition. This might be bumpy, I warned Emma as I lined it with garden cushions and carefully placed her inside. She managed a weak smile. Like when I was little and you pulled me around the park. My heart broke at the memory, but I focused on the task. Using the tablet, I messaged Marcus our location and that we were heading toward the road. The wagon rolled surprisingly smoothly across the grass. I stayed close to the tree line, using the growing dusk as cover. We were maybe 50 yards from the property edge when I heard shouting from the house. Julie. My father's bellow echoed across the yard. Get back here right now. I didn't stop. If anything, I pulled harder, my muscles burning with effort. Emma whimpered with each bump but didn't cry out. There they are. Jake's voice closer than expected. I glanced back to see all three of them charging across the yard. My father moved fast for his age fury driving him forward. But years of 12-hour nursing shifts had given me endurance, and desperation gave me speed. Stop right there or I'm calling the police, my mother shrieked. Please do, I shouted back. Tell them how you denied medical care to a child. We reached the road just as headlights appeared. For a terrifying moment, I thought it might be Sarah returning, but then I recognized Marcus's pickup truck. He screeched to a halt, jumping out with his partner Chen, both in their EMT uniforms. Get her in the back, Marcus commanded, already grabbing his medical kit. Chen helped me lift Emma onto the truck bed where they'd set up a makeshift treatment area. Marcus immediately began assessing her leg, his face grave. My family reached us just as Chen started taking Emma's vitals. This is kidnapping, my father roared. That's my granddaughter. Sir, step back, Chen said firmly. We're medical professionals treating an injured child. You have no right. Actually, we do, Marcus interrupted, not looking up from Emma's leg. We received a request for a wellness check, and what we're seeing constitutes medical neglect. This child has a serious fracture that's been untreated for hours. It's not serious, my mother insisted. Julie is overreacting. Marcus finally looked up, his expression professionally neutral, but his eyes hard. Ma'am, your granddaughter is showing signs of compartment syndrome. Without immediate treatment, she could lose this leg. Is that what you consider not serious? The color drained from my mother's face. Jake took a step back, his bravado crumbling. But my father doubled down. You can't just take her. We'll sue you for everything you have. Please do, Chen said calmly while starting an IV line. I'm sure the court would love to hear how you forced a child with a fractured tibia to walk 3 miles. Blue and red lights appeared down the road. The police had arrived for the wellness check, and suddenly my family's threats seemed much less intimidating. Julie. My mother's voice turned pleading. Don't do this, we're family. We can work this out privately. I looked at her, this woman who had watched her granddaughter suffer for hours without compassion, who had plotted to steal my child while pretending to help. You're right, I said evenly. Family should work things out, which is why I documented everything, every refusal to help, every cruel comment, every minute Emma suffered. Your emails about taking custody, Jake's videos of her pain, Dad's notes from the lawyer. I have it all. Jake's face went pale. You went through our stuff, just like you went through my bank statements, I shot back. The police car pulled up and 2 officers emerged. One immediately approached Marcus and Chen, while the other addressed our group. We received a call about a child welfare concern. These EMTs are kidnapping my granddaughter, my father stated. We're transporting an injured minor for emergency medical treatment, Marcus corrected. Parents were preventing access to care. The officer looked at Emma, taking in the obvious injury and medical equipment now attached to her. How long has she been injured? About 4 hours, I said. My family refused to let me take her to the hospital. She's being dramatic, my mother started. Ma'am, the officer interrupted. I'm going to need all of you to step back while we sort this out. Sarah's car suddenly reappeared, pulling up behind the police cruiser. She got out, her face determined, and walked straight to the officers. I'm Sarah Chen. I'm a teacher and mandated reporter. I witnessed this child being denied medical care and tried to call 911 earlier, but was prevented from doing so by the family. My family's shock at her return was almost comical. Jake reached for her, but she stepped away from him. I couldn't leave knowing that little girl was suffering, she told him coldly. What kind of person would that make me? The kind that minds her own business, my father snapped. Sarah turned to the police officer. I'd like to make a formal statement about what I witnessed. The twist wasn't just that we'd escaped or that help had arrived. It was watching my family's carefully constructed facade crumble as they realized their conspiracy had backfired. The mandated reporter they'd invited to dinner, the EMT friend they didn't know I had the documentation they never suspected I'd gathered. Every element of their plan had become a weapon against them. We need to transport now, Marcus announced. She needs surgery. As they prepared to move Emma to the ambulance that had just arrived, she reached for my hand. Mommy, are you coming? Nothing could keep me away, baby, I promised. My father made one last attempt. If you get in that ambulance, don't bother coming back to this family. I looked at him, then at my mother and Jake, all 3 standing there with identical expressions of outrage that their authority had been challenged. The family that had raised me, that should have protected my daughter, that had chosen cruelty over compassion. After today, I said quietly, why would I want to? The officer asked if I wanted to file charges for child endangerment. I glanced at Emma being loaded into the ambulance, then at my family. Yes, I said firmly, I do. The calculated response had worked. By playing along just long enough, by gathering evidence instead of engaging in futile arguments, by finding unexpected allies, I'd turned their trap into their own downfall. They'd wanted to paint me as an unstable mother, but instead, they'd revealed themselves as the true danger to Emma's well-being. As I climbed into the ambulance beside my daughter, I heard my mother's wail of disbelief, my father's threats about lawyers, Jake's angry accusations towards Sarah. But their voices faded as we pulled away, replaced by the steady beeping of Emma's monitors and Marcus's reassuring updates on her condition. The battle was far from over. There would be legal proceedings, family drama, and difficult healing ahead. But in that moment, with Emma's small hand in mine and proper medical care finally happening, I knew we'd won the first and most important round. The ambulance ride blurred past in a haze of medical terminology and Emma's quiet whimpers. I held her hand while Marcus and his partner worked starting IV fluids and administering pain medication that finally brought relief to her drawn features. You did good, Julie, Marcus said quietly as he adjusted Emma's oxygen levels. Another few hours and we might have been looking at permanent damage. Through the small window, I could see the police cars still at my parents' house, their lights painting the evening in alternating shades of blue and red. My phone, still in my father's possession, was probably ringing non-stop, but the tablet in my bag showed a stream of messages from the accounts I'd messaged earlier. At the hospital, Emma was whisked away for x-rays and a surgical consultation. I used the waiting time to make crucial calls from the hospital phone. First, Ellen, my attorney. "Julie, I got your emails. This is serious. I'm filing emergency motions tonight. They can't claim you're an unfit mother when they're the ones who denied medical care." "They have my phone and car keys," I explained. "And Jake posted videos of Emma in pain on social media. Screenshot everything you can find. We'll subpoena his phone records. This level of documentation of their own neglect. They've handed us a gift." Next, I called Richard. My ex-husband answered on the first ring, having already seen my earlier messages. "Julie, what the hell, is Emma okay?" I explained everything, and for once Richard's tendency toward calm analysis served us well. "I'm driving back from Chicago now. I'll be there in 3 hours. And Julie, I'm calling my lawyer too. If your parents want a custody fight, they'll get one, but not the way they planned." The surprising support from my ex-husband, with whom things had ended so messily, felt like another small victory. Whatever our differences, Emma's well-being united us. Dr. Patel, the orthopedic surgeon, found me in the waiting room an hour later. "Mrs. Morrison, Emma's x-rays show a displaced spiral fracture of the tibia. There's significant soft tissue swelling, but we caught it before any permanent damage occurred. She needs surgery tonight." "Whatever she needs," I said immediately. "I have to ask," she continued gently. "The EMTs mentioned she walked on this injury." "My family forced her to, for 3 miles. Dr. Patel's expression hardened. "I'll be documenting everything in my report. That kind of delay could have resulted in compartment syndrome, nerve damage, even amputation. You got her here just in time." As they prepped Emma for surgery, she looked so small in the hospital bed. The pain medication had made her drowsy, but she squeezed my hand. "Are Grandma and Grandpa going to be mad at us?" "That doesn't matter anymore, baby. What matters is getting you better." "Uncle Jake was mean," she murmured. "He laughed when I cried." Another note for the documentation. Emma's own words would be crucial if this went to court. The surgery waiting room became my temporary command center. Using the hospital's guest Wi-Fi, I accessed Jake's social media from the tablet. My stomach turned as I found the video he'd posted just hours ago. Emma limping through the woods, her face twisted in pain, with the caption, "Drama queen niece thinks she's dying from a twisted ankle, kids these days." The comments were brutal. Most people immediately recognized something was seriously wrong, calling Jake out for filming instead of helping. Several mentioned they were reporting the post for child abuse. I screenshot everything before he could delete it. Sarah had commented too. "This is disgusting. That child is seriously injured and you're mocking her. We're done, Jake." I found Sarah's number in the comments where she'd shared it with someone offering support. My hands shook as I dialed. "Sarah, this is Julie, Emma's mom." "Oh, thank God, is she okay? I've been sick with worry. I'm so sorry I left. I just couldn't stand being near them after." "You came back. That's what matters. Emma's in surgery now." Sarah's voice cracked. "I teach 4th grade. I've seen abused kids before, but watching your family actively deny her care while she suffered, and Jake laughing about it, I can't believe I dated someone capable of that. Would you be willing to provide a written statement about what you witnessed?" "Already done." I wrote it all down as soon as I got home and emailed it to the address the officer gave me. "Julie, there's something else. Jake showed me photos on his phone a few weeks ago bragging about documenting your struggles. I thought it was weird then, but now I realize he's been building a case against you. Do you remember what kind of photos? You looking tired at Pick Up Emma in clothes he said were shabby onto your apartment. He made it sound like you were failing as a mother, but honestly, all I saw was a single mom doing her best. I should have said something sooner." We talked for a few more minutes, Sarah providing details that would prove invaluable. She'd only dated Jake for 6 months, but had noticed troubling patterns: his need for control, his cruel sense of humor, his strange competitiveness with me, despite being the successful sibling. 2 hours into surgery, the waiting room doors burst open. My parents and Jake strode in, looking like they owned the place. My mother's makeup was smeared. My father's face was thunderous, and Jake kept checking his phone obsessively. "Where is she?" my father demanded. "Surgery," I replied, not moving from my chair. "You had no right to authorize that." "I'm her mother. I have every right." "After that stunt you pulled—" My mother's voice was shrill, sneaking out like thieves, making us look like criminals in front of the neighbors. "You are criminals," I said calmly. "You committed child endangerment." Jake finally looked up from his phone, his face pale. "My post got removed for violating community guidelines. My account might get banned. This is your fault." "You posted a video of a child suffering for entertainment. That's your fault." "She was faking," he insisted, though even he didn't sound convinced anymore. "The surgeon says she could have lost her leg if we'd waited longer," I informed them. "Still think she was faking." Security arrived, then probably called by the nurses, who'd overheard the rising voices. My family was escorted to a different waiting area, but not before my father issued one last threat. "This isn't over, Julie. You've destroyed this family, but you won't get away with it." Richard arrived as Emma was coming out of surgery. Despite our messy history, he immediately focused on what mattered. "Tell me everything?" he said, and I did. His expression grew darker with each detail. "They've been planning to take her from you," he said when I finished. "Julie, I know we've had our problems, but you're a good mother. Emma's lucky to have you." "Then why didn't you fight harder for custody?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. He sighed. "Because I travel 80% of the time for work. Because you're the stable one, the one who knows her favorite books and which foods she won't eat and how to braid her hair for dance class. I pay support and see her when I can, but you're her real parent. I see that now more than ever." And it wasn't a perfect apology for his absence, but it was honest. And right now, I needed allies more than old grudges. Dr. Patel found us there, Richard and me, sitting with careful distance between us, but united in worry. "Surgery went perfectly. We've set the bone with pins, and she'll need a cast for about 8 weeks. No permanent damage, though. She'll need physical therapy once it heals." The relief nearly knocked me over. Richard actually hugged me, brief and awkward, but genuine. "Can we see her?" "She's waking up now, one at a time initially." Emma looked so small in the recovery bed, her leg encased in a purple cast she'd probably chosen while still groggy. Her eyes fluttered open when I touched her hand. "Hi, baby, how do you feel?" "Floaty," she murmured. "Is my leg still there?" "Yes, sweetheart, all fixed. You were so brave." "Dad's here, too." "He is. He drove from Chicago to see you." Her smile was worth everything we'd been through. "Are Grandma and Grandpa still mad?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is you're safe and getting better." "Mom." Her voice was serious despite the medication. "I don't want to go back there, ever." "You don't have to, I promise." The escape plan had worked better than I could have imagined. Not just the physical escape from my parents' house, but the escape from their toxic influence, their controlling manipulation, their willingness to harm a child to prove a point. The documentation I'd gathered would protect us legally, but Emma's words, her clear desire to stay away from them, would be the most powerful evidence of all. As she drifted back to sleep, I began planning our next moves. New locks for the apartment, a restraining order trauma therapy for Emma, and building a new support system that didn't include blood relatives who'd proven they couldn't be trusted with our safety. The escape was just the beginning. Now came the harder part, rebuilding our lives, free from people who claim to love us while causing deliberate harm. But sitting there watching Emma sleep peacefully for the first time in hours, her leg properly treated and pain managed, I knew we'd already won the most important battle. Emma slept fitfully through the night, and I dozed in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed, waking every time she stirred. Around 3 in the morning, a gentle knock interrupted the quiet beeping of monitors. Mrs. Morrison. A woman in a hospital ID badge entered. I'm Patricia Daniels from Patient Advocacy. I understand there are some concerns about how your daughter's injury was handled before she arrived here. I sat up straighter. Yes, my family prevented me from getting her medical care for over 4 hours. Patricia's expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the flash of concern in her eyes. Would you be comfortable sharing the details? This conversation will be documented as part of Emma's medical record. For the next hour, I laid out everything: the fall, my family's dismissal, the forced walk, the threats, the escape. Patricia took careful notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. The EMTs mentioned you have documentation. I pulled out the tablet, showing her the photos, the timestamps, the messages from Marcus, confirming the medical urgency, and screenshots of Jake's social media posts. Patricia studied everything carefully. Mrs. Morrison, what I'm seeing here constitutes serious medical neglect. The hospital is required to report this to both CPS and law enforcement. Are you prepared for that? I already spoke to the police at the scene, and yes, I want this reported. They're threatening to take custody of Emma, claiming I'm an unfit mother. Based on what I'm seeing, they're the ones who endangered her. Dr. Patel's surgical notes indicate your daughter narrowly avoided permanent damage. Walking on that fracture could have compromised blood flow to the point of tissue death. She pulled up something on her tablet. I also want you to know that this isn't the first time your father's name has come up in concerning circumstances. My blood chilled. What do you mean? I can't share details due to privacy laws, but I can say that we've had previous reports of your father pressuring medical staff when family members were patients. Nothing that rose to legal action, but enough that security has a note in their system. I thought back to instances I'd dismissed or rationalized my father arguing with my mother's doctor about unnecessary heart medication. His insistence that my grandmother didn't need home nursing care after her stroke, the way he'd berated a nurse when Jake had appendicitis as a teenager. He doesn't believe in coddling sick people, I said quietly. Thinks modern medicine makes people weak. That philosophy nearly cost your daughter her leg, Patricia said bluntly. I'm going to flag this file for our legal department and social services. Someone will be in touch this morning. After she left, I sat in the darkness processing this revelation. My father's controlling nature extended beyond family dynamics into actively interfering with medical care. How many times had family members suffered because of his arrogance? Morning brought a parade of professionals. First Detective Maria Santos, a no-nonsense woman who specialized in crimes against children. The video your brother posted has actually made our job easier, she explained. It clearly shows a child in distress being forced to walk on an obvious injury while adults film for entertainment. That's textbook endangerment. Will charges actually stick. My family has money for good lawyers. Money doesn't erase video evidence, or medical documentation, or witness statements. We have your brother on camera laughing at a child's pain. We have EMT reports confirming urgent transport was needed. We have surgical notes detailing how close Emma came to permanent disability. And now we have a pattern of behavior with your father's previous interference in medical situations. Richard arrived with coffee and breakfast sandwiches as the detective was leaving. He'd spent the night at a nearby hotel, ready to help however needed. My lawyer says we can file for an emergency custody modification, he said, handing me coffee. Making sure your parents can never get unsupervised access to Emma again. You'd do that, fight them with me. He looked at Emma, still sleeping but peaceful. I haven't been the best father, always prioritizing work, assuming you had everything handled. But yesterday opened my eyes. What kind of father would I be if I didn't protect her from people who hurt her? Around 8, Emma woke properly, more alert than she'd been post-surgery. The first thing she did was examine her purple cast with interest. Can people sign it? Of course, baby. Who do you want to sign it first? You and Dad, then Marcus, since he helped save my leg. Her matter-of-fact acceptance that Marcus had saved her leg hit hard. At 12, she understood how serious the situation had been. Dr. Patel arrived for morning rounds, pleased with Emma's progress. The surgery went perfectly. Clean break, good alignment. She'll need to stay another day or two for observation, then she can go home with strict elevation instructions. What about physical therapy? We'll start that once the initial healing is complete. She's young and healthy. I expect full recovery with no lasting effects. She paused. She's lucky you got her here when you did. Another few hours and we'd be having a very different conversation. After the doctor left, Emma asked quietly, "Mom, why did Grandma and Grandpa want me to keep walking when I was hurt? How do you explain cruelty to a child, especially from people who should love her?" "I don't fully understand it myself," I admitted. "Sometimes people get so stuck in their own ideas that they can't see when they're hurting others. But that's not your fault, and it's not normal. Most people would have helped you immediately." "Like Sarah did." "Exactly like Sarah did." A knock interrupted us. Sarah herself stood in the doorway holding a small gift bag and looking uncertain. "I hope it's okay that I came. I was worried about Emma." Emma's face lit up. "Sarah, you tried to help me." "Of course I did, sweetie." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry I couldn't do more sooner." She'd brought Emma a stuffed purple dragon to match your cast and a new book series about a girl detective. While Emma excitedly examined her gifts, Sarah pulled me aside. "Jake's been calling and texting nonstop. I blocked him, but he's using other people's phones. He's alternating between apologizing and threatening to sue me for defamation." "I'm so sorry you're dealing with this because of us." "Because of him," Sarah corrected. "I've been thinking about all the red flags I ignored. The way he talked about you, always painting you as dramatic or difficult. How he'd mock Emma's interests as too girly or weak. I think he was testing me, seeing if I'd go along with the family dynamics. You didn't, though. You stood up for Emma when it mattered." "I teach kids her age. I couldn't look at my students Monday morning if I'd walked away from a child in pain." Our conversation was interrupted by commotion in the hallway. Security was escorting someone past our room, and I caught a glimpse of my brother being firmly guided toward the elevators. A security guard stopped at our door. "Ma'am, someone named Jake Morrison attempted to access this room. He's not on the approved visitor list, so we're removing him from the premises. He won't be allowed back." Emma had gone pale at hearing Jake's name. "Is he mad at me?" "No, baby. He's mad at himself for making bad choices. Security is making sure he stays away." But I knew Jake wouldn't give up easily. None of them would. The revelation about my father's history of medical interference had added a new dimension to their threat. This wasn't just about custody anymore. It was about their entire worldview being challenged, their control slipping away. My tablet buzzed with messages. Ellen had filed the emergency motions. The restraining order paperwork was ready. CPS wanted to interview Emma once she felt up to it. The legal machinery was in motion. Another message caught my eye, this one from my cousin Beth in Seattle. "Julie, I heard what happened. I'm sorry I never spoke up before, but Uncle Robert did the same thing when my mom had cancer. Tried to stop her chemo, said it was poison. She almost died because of his interference. If you need testimony about his pattern of behavior, I'm here." More messages followed. Other family members who'd been silent for years, suddenly finding their voices, sharing stories of my father's dangerous medical interventions. My mother's enabling Jake's cruelty, disguised as humor. The revelation was spreading, and with it the family's carefully maintained facade was crumbling. Emma had started drawing on the paper the nurses brought her, tongue poking out in concentration as she worked. When she showed me the picture, my heart clenched. It was our little family, her, me, and even Richard, standing together under a rainbow. No grandparents, no Uncle Jake, just the people who'd actually protected her when she needed it most. "That's beautiful, baby. It's our new family," she explained, "the one that takes care of each other." The hospital revelation wasn't just about my father's past behavior or the severity of Emma's injury. It was about understanding that the family we're born into isn't always the family we need. Sometimes protection comes from unexpected places. An EMT friend who drops everything to help an ex-husband who steps up when it matters, a stranger who refuses to be complicit in cruelty, and a 12-year-old girl wise enough to recognize real love from fake. The next morning, Ellen arrived at the hospital with a briefcase full of documents and a determined expression that reminded me why she was worth every penny of her fees. "I've been up all night preparing," she said, spreading papers across the rolling tray table. "Your family made a critical error documenting their conspiracy. These emails and notes, they're admissible evidence of premeditation. Will it be enough to keep them away from Emma?" "More than enough. But we're not just playing defense here. What they did constitutes multiple crimes: child endangerment conspiracy to commit custodial interference, medical neglect, and potentially assault for forcing her to walk on that injury." Detective Santos joined us, having coordinated with Ellen. "The district attorney is very interested in this case. Child endangerment cases with this level of documentation are rare. Your brother's social media post alone could result in charges." "What about my parents?" "Your mother can be charged as an accomplice. Your father as the one who took your keys and physically prevented you from leaving faces the most serious charges. The fact that he has a history of interfering with medical care establishes a pattern." Ellen pulled out a thick folder. "I've also been in contact with 6 other family members who've come forward with similar stories about your father's medical interference. Your cousin Beth's mother nearly died when he convinced her to stop chemotherapy. Your Aunt Linda has permanent nerve damage because he insisted her back pain was all in her head until a disc ruptured completely. The scope of my father's dangerous arrogance was staggering. How did no one stop him before? Fear, family loyalty, his forceful personality. But Emma's case is different. There's video evidence, multiple witnesses, and a child victim. This is the case that could finally hold him accountable." We spent the next 2 hours going through everything, signing documents, reviewing evidence, preparing for what would come next. Ellen had already filed for an emergency protective order covering both Emma and me. "Your ex-husband's lawyer contacted me," she added. "Richard wants to modify custody to ensure your family has zero access to Emma. He's also offering to pay for any additional security measures you need." It was surreal having Richard as an ally after our contentious divorce, but Emma's safety had realigned our priorities. After the legal team left, Emma had her first session with Dr. Kim, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. I waited outside, anxiety gnawing at me as I imagined what Emma might be sharing. Dr. Kim emerged after an hour. "She's remarkably resilient, but there's definite trauma from the event. She's particularly troubled by the fact that family members she trusted ignored her pain. We'll need regular sessions to work through this." "What did she say?" "I can't share specifics without Emma's permission, but I can tell you she's very clear that she doesn't want contact with your parents or brother. That's actually a healthy response. She's recognizing who isn't safe for her." Emma was quiet when I returned to the room, clutching the stuffed dragon Sarah had brought. "How was talking to Dr. Kim?" "Good. She said it's okay to be mad at Grandma and Grandpa. I didn't think I was allowed to be mad at them." "You're allowed to feel however you feel, baby. Your feelings are valid." "I'm really mad," she admitted in a small voice. "They were mean and they didn't care that I was hurt. And Uncle Jake laughed." "I'm mad too," I said honestly. "What they did was wrong." That afternoon, CPS investigator Monica Reeves arrived. She was kind but thorough, interviewing Emma gently but comprehensively. I stepped out when asked, but could hear Emma's clear voice through the door recounting the events without embellishment or exaggeration, just the facts which were damning enough. Monica found me in the hallway afterward. "Your daughter is very credible. Her account matches all the other evidence. I'm recommending immediate intervention to prevent your parents from having any unsupervised access to her." "What about supervised visits?" That would be up to the court, but given the severity of the neglect and the premeditated attempt to gain custody through false claims, I'd be recommending against any contact until extensive therapy and parenting classes are completed. My phone finally returned by the police as evidence buzzed constantly with calls and texts from extended family. Some supported us, sharing their own stories. Others, firmly under my parents' influence, accused me of destroying the family. One voicemail from my mother stood out. "Julia Marie, this has gone far enough. Call off your lawyers and we can discuss this like civilized people. You're breaking your father's heart. All this over a little tumble from a tree. You've blown everything out of proportion as usual, but we're willing to forgive you if you come to your senses." The delusion was breathtaking. Even now, with criminal charges pending and Emma hospitalized, she minimized everything. A little tumble. As if Emma's leg hadn't been broken, as if they hadn't tortured her for hours. Marcus stopped by during his break, still in his EMT uniform. Emma's face lit up when she saw him. "You saved my leg," she announced. "Mom says if you hadn't come, I might have lost it." Marcus looked uncomfortable with the hero worship, but signed her cast with a flourish. "You're the brave one, kiddo. You hung in there when things were really scary." While Emma showed him her drawings, Marcus pulled me aside. "My partner and I have been called to testify. Our report is pretty damning. When we arrived, Emma was showing early signs of compartment syndrome. Another hour or two." "I know, thank you, for everything." "Hey, that's what friends do. Plus, I've seen too many cases where family members hurt kids and everyone stays quiet. Not happening on my watch." Sarah arrived again after work this time with a box of art supplies for Emma. I thought she might get bored stuck in bed. Emma immediately dove into the supplies, exclaiming over the quality markers and sketch pad. While she drew, Sarah updated me on Jake's escalating behavior. "He showed up at my school today. Security had to escort him out. He's convinced I've ruined his life by overreacting to a family situation." "I'm so sorry. Do you want me to include you in the protective order?" "Already filed my own. My principal was very supportive. Turns out Jake's not the first unstable ex to show up at the school. They have protocols." "You've been amazing through all this. I can't thank you enough." Sarah watched Emma drawing intently. "She's what, 12, same age as my students. The thought of any of them suffering like she did. I couldn't live with myself if I'd stayed silent." Ellen called with an update. "The emergency protective order was granted. Your parents and Jake cannot come within 500 feet of you or Emma. They're also barred from contacting you except through legal channels." "What about their custody petition?" "Dead in the water. No judge will grant custody to people facing criminal charges for endangering the child in question. If anything, their attempt to gain custody makes the criminal case stronger. It shows motive for the medical neglect." That evening, Richard stayed with Emma while I ran home to get us both fresh clothes and check the apartment. I'd been gone less than 48 hours, but it felt like a lifetime. The apartment looked undisturbed, but I noticed subtle signs someone had been there. Papers on my desk slightly shifted Emma's room too neat, as if someone had been searching for something. I called Detective Santos immediately. She sent officers to dust for prints and check security footage from the building. "Your father was here," she confirmed an hour later. "Building security shows him entering with a key around noon yesterday. Do you want to add breaking and entering to the charges?" "He's not on the lease, so yes, absolutely." "We'll get a warrant for his arrest tonight. Between this and the child endangerment, he's looking at significant jail time if convicted." I changed all the locks that night, installed a new security system, and placed Emma's beloved stuffed animals in a bag to bring to the hospital. Her room felt too empty without her, but I tried to focus on the future. Emma would come home to a safe space where no one could hurt her again. Back at the hospital, I found Richard reading to Emma from one of her favorite books. The scene was bittersweet. This engaged father figure was who Emma had needed all along, not the weekend dad who'd prioritized work. "How's the apartment?" he asked. "Violated. My father broke in while we were here." Richard's jaw clenched. "I've been thinking. My company has an office here. I could request a transfer, be around more. Actually, be a father instead of just child support payments. Emma looked up hopefully. Really, you'd move here. If that's okay with you and your mom, I've missed too much already. I saw the yearning in Emma's eyes and nodded. We'll figure it out. Later, as Emma slept, I sat in the darkness planning our next moves. The legal machinery was in motion, but I knew my family wouldn't go down without a fight. They'd hire expensive lawyers, try to spin the narrative attempt to turn family members against us. But they'd underestimated us. They'd underestimated a mother's love, a child's resilience, and the power of truth backed by evidence. The legal preparation wasn't just about protecting ourselves, it was about ensuring this never happened to another child in our family. My cousin Beth had mentioned other victims of my father's medical tyranny. How many had suffered in silence? How many had worse outcomes because they lacked the support system I'd found? This case wouldn't just be about Emma, it would be about all of them, and about breaking the cycle of control and abuse disguised as family values. The preparation phase was complete. Now came the fight. 2 days later, Emma was discharged with detailed care instructions and a follow-up appointment scheduled. The purple cast had already accumulated several signatures mine, Richard's, Marcus's, Sarah's, and even some of the nurses who'd grown fond of my brave girl during her stay. We arrived home to find Officer Chen waiting in the lobby with building security. My heart raced until he explained, "Just a precaution, ma'am. We arrested your father this morning for the break-in. He's out on bail, but we wanted to make sure he hadn't violated the protective order." He was arrested. The reality of my father in handcuffs was hard to process despite everything. At his country club, actually, made quite a scene according to the arresting officers, kept insisting he had a right to check on his granddaughter's living conditions. The thought of my father being arrested in front of his golf buddies would have been satisfying if it weren't so sad. How had we gotten here? Inside our apartment, I'd tried to make everything welcoming for Emma. Her favorite purple blanket on the couch, snacks she could eat while keeping her leg elevated, a new stack of books Sarah had recommended. But she seemed subdued, carefully navigating with her crutches. "You okay, baby?" It's weird being home. I keep thinking they're going to show up. They can't. The protective order means they'll be arrested if they come near us. But what if they don't care Grandpa already got arrested once and he's out? Her fear was valid. My father had never faced real consequences before, and I wasn't sure a court order would stop him if he decided to escalate. That afternoon, Monica Reeves from CPS arrived for a home visit. She thoroughly inspected our apartment, taking notes on everything from the stocked refrigerator to Emma's organized school supplies. "This is clearly a loving, stable home," she said after completing her assessment. "I'll be recommending to close any investigation into your fitness as a parent. However, we'll be pursuing the case against your parents and brother." What does that involve? Interviews with everyone involved, gathering medical records, reviewing the evidence. Emma mentioned other incidents during our hospital interview that we need to explore. Other incidents. Monica consulted her notes. Times your parents put her in dangerous situations to toughen her up. Making her swim in the lake without supervision last summer, forcing her to ride a horse that was too large for her despite her fear. My stomach dropped. I didn't know about those. They told me she loved swimming and begged to ride the horse. Children often don't report these things, especially when the adults frame it as normal. Emma only mentioned them when I asked if she'd ever been scared at her grandparents' house before. Rage and guilt battled in my chest. How many times had I left Emma with them, trusting they'd keep her safe? "There's a pattern here," Monica continued, "one that extends beyond just Emma. We've received several calls since news of this incident spread. Other family members wanting to report historical incidents. After she left, I found Emma in her room trying to arrange her stuffed animals one-handed while balancing on crutches. Here, let me help." I sat on her bed and she gratefully sank down beside me. "Emma, Ms. Reeves mentioned you told her about swimming in the lake and the horse." Her face crumpled. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Grandpa said I was being a baby and that you'd be disappointed if you knew I was scared." "Oh, sweetheart, no." I pulled her close. I would never be disappointed in you for being scared. Being scared is how our brains keep us safe. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. It's not your fault. They were really good at pretending everything was normal when you were around. The manipulation ran deeper than I'd realized. They'd trained Emma to hide her fear, to doubt her own instincts, all while I thought she was having wonderful grandparent time. That evening, Detective Santos called with an update. We've interviewed your brother's ex-girlfriend, Sarah. Her statement is compelling. She also provided text messages where Jake explicitly discussed the plan to document your failures as a mother. He put it in writing. Multiple times. He was quite proud of the scheme. Also, we've recovered deleted videos from his cloud storage. There are several incidents of Emma in distress that he filmed over the past few months. None as severe as the broken leg, but disturbing nonetheless. He's been filming her suffering for months. It appears so. One video shows Emma crying after falling off her bike, with Jake laughing and calling her soft like her mother. Another has her struggling with a too heavy backpack while he mocks her weakness. Each revelation felt like another knife wound. My own brother had been systematically documenting and mocking my child's pain, building a case that I was raising her to be weak. The next morning, Ellen arrived with more documents and a grim expression. Your parents have hired the Fitzgerald law firm. They're known for aggressive tactics and deep pockets. Of course they did. The Fitzgeralds had helped my father's business crush smaller competitors for years. They're already trying to spin the narrative, claiming this is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by an emotionally unstable daughter going through a difficult divorce. But the evidence is overwhelming, yes, but they'll try to discredit each piece. The video's loving uncle documenting family moments, the forced walk-building character in a generation of soft children, the break-in, a concerned grandfather checking on his granddaughter. How can they possibly explain away a broken leg? They'll minimize it, say you overreacted to a minor injury, paint you as hysterical. It's a classic defense strategy, but it falls apart when faced with medical documentation and witness testimony. Richard arrived as Ellen was leaving, looking haggard. I've been fielding calls all morning. Your parents are reaching out to everyone we know, trying to get character statements against you. Are people buying it? Some are. Your father's very persuasive when he wants to be, but others are pushing back. Mrs. Patterson, your neighbor. She called them monsters and hung up, and several of my business associates have refused to get involved. I'm sorry you're getting dragged into this. I'm not. I should have been more involved from the beginning. Maybe if I'd been a more present father, they wouldn't have felt so comfortable targeting Emma. His guilt mirrored my own, but wallowing wouldn't help Emma. We can't change the past. We can only protect her going forward. That afternoon brought another surprise. My Aunt Linda, my father's younger sister, whom I'd barely seen in 5 years, appeared at our door. I know I should have called, she said, leaning heavily on her cane, but I was afraid you wouldn't see me. I almost turned her away, but something in her expression stopped me. Come in, but if you're here to plead their case, God, no. She settled carefully on our couch, mindful of Emma watching warily from her chair. I'm here to apologize and to offer testimony about what your father did to me. Linda's story was eerily familiar. Years ago, she'd injured her back in a fall. My father convinced her it was minor, that seeking immediate treatment was weakness. By the time she finally defied him and went to the hospital, the damage was permanent. I've used this cane for 15 years because I let Robert bully me out of proper medical care, she said bitterly. When I heard what he did to Emma, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Emma had been listening intently. Did it hurt really bad, your back? It did, sweetheart. Just like your leg hurt. And just like you, I knew something was seriously wrong, but the adults who should have helped me didn't listen. But you're okay now. Linda smiled sadly. I've adapted, but I'll always wonder how different life might have been if I'd gotten help right away. That's why I'm so proud of your mom for fighting to get you care." Her visit opened floodgates. Over the next few days, more family members came forward. My father's pattern of medical neglect and control stretched back decades, affecting siblings, cousins, even family friends who'd made the mistake of showing vulnerability around him. Detective Santos coordinated with prosecutors to build a comprehensive case. What had started as one incident of child endangerment was revealing itself as a long-standing pattern of abuse, disguised as family values. "We're looking at potential charges going back years," she told me during one of our many meetings. "Some are past the statute of limitations, but they establish pattern of behavior that strengthens the current charges." The investigation was also revealing Jake's role as my father's eager accomplice. His phone records showed months of messages discussing ways to undermine my parenting document, my struggles, and position himself as the stable alternative for Emma's custody. The really sick part, Detective Santos noted, is that he seems to have genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. His messages frame you as a failure who needed tough love, and Emma as a child who needed hardening. Sarah had been right about Jake testing her. Several messages discussed whether she'd be a suitable mother figure for Emma once they gained custody. Her refusal to go along with the medical neglect had derailed that plan spectacularly. One evening, as I helped Emma with her homework, she'd insisted on keeping up with school despite everything. She asked a question that stopped me cold. "Mom, why did they want to take me away from you?" I set down the math workbook, choosing my words carefully. "I think they wanted to control how you were raised. They believed their way was the only right way, even when it hurt people." "But they hurt me. Why would they think that was right?" Sometimes people convince themselves that causing pain is necessary for teaching strength, but that's not true. Real strength comes from love and support, not from suffering. "Like how you carried me even when your back hurt." Exactly like that. She pondered this, then returned to her fractions with the focus of a child who'd learned too young that adults don't always have good answers. The investigation was far from over, but already it was reshaping our understanding of family trust and protection. My parents and Jake would face legal consequences, but the deeper reckoning was within our extended family, forced to confront decades of normalized abuse. As I tucked Emma in that night, careful not to jostle her cast, she whispered, "I'm glad you fought for me, Mom. Always, baby, always." The investigation would continue uncovering more ugliness and pain, but it would also reveal the strength of survivors, the power of truth, and the fierce love that refuses to let children suffer for someone else's twisted principles. The real investigation wasn't just into crimes committed, but into how we'd allowed it to go on for so long and how we'd ensure it never happened again. 3 weeks had passed since Emma's surgery, and she was adapting well to life with her cast. Physical therapy had begun, and her spirits seemed lighter with each day that passed without contact from my parents or Jake. But I knew the calm wouldn't last. The inevitable confrontation came on a Tuesday morning. Ellen called just as I was preparing Emma's breakfast. "Your parents and Jake just arrived at my office with their legal team. They're demanding a meeting to resolve this misunderstanding before it destroys the family. They claim they have information that will change everything." "What kind of information?" "They won't say, but Julie, you don't have to meet with them. We can handle everything through legal channels." I looked at Emma carefully, buttering her toast with her left hand, while her right managed the crutch propped beside her chair. She'd grown so much in these weeks, facing her fears with courage I hadn't known she possessed. "I'll meet with them," I decided, "but only at your office, with you present and with clear conditions." "Are you sure?" "They need to see they haven't broken me, and I need to face them for my own closure." Ellen scheduled the meeting for that afternoon. I arranged for Emma to stay with Sarah, who had become a trusted friend through this ordeal. Emma clung to me before I left. "You don't have to go, Mom. We're okay without them." "I know, baby. But sometimes we have to face the hard things to truly move forward." The law office conference room felt sterile and cold, appropriate for what was about to unfold. My parents entered first, my father in his best suit, my mother clutching her purse like a weapon. Jake followed, looking haggard and smaller somehow, as if the past weeks had deflated his usual bravado. Their lawyer, Thomas Fitzgerald himself, radiated the smug confidence of a man used to winning through intimidation. My team consisted of Ellen Detective Santos, who'd insisted on attending, and Patricia Daniels from the hospital, who'd become an advocate for our case. Let's dispense with pleasantries. My father began, not even attempting a greeting. This nonsense has gone far enough. You've turned a simple family disagreement into a circus. A child with a broken leg is not a simple disagreement, Ellen stated flatly. Children break bones all the time, my mother interjected. Julie has blown this completely out of proportion, as she does with everything. Would you like to see the surgical photos? Patricia offered. The ones showing how close Emma came to permanent damage. Fitzgerald raised a hand. We're not here to relitigate the incident. We're here to find a resolution that keeps this family out of criminal court. Then they should plead guilty. I said, my voice steadier than I felt. They committed crimes. They should face the consequences. Jake laughed bitterly. Crimes? For posting a family video, for caring about my niece's upbringing, for documenting a child's pain as entertainment, Detective Santos corrected. We've recovered 16 videos from your cloud storage showing Emma in distress while you mock her. Jake's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, and he fell silent. Here's what's going to happen, my father announced as if he were running a board meeting. You're going to drop these ridiculous charges. We'll agree to give you some space, maybe skip a few holidays. In return, we set up a trust for Emma that ensures she's properly provided for. You mean a trust you control? I asked. Someone needs to manage it responsibly, he replied. Your financial situation speaks for itself. Ellen slid a folder across the table. Actually, let's discuss finances, specifically how you illegally accessed Julie's bank records and filed false reports with credit agencies to damage her credit score. The color drained from my mother's face. We have the digital trail, Ellen continued, including the email where you, Mrs. Morrison, bragged to your sister about teaching Julie a lesson about financial responsibility by reporting fraudulent late payments. I stared at my parents in shock. My struggles to rebuild credit after the divorce hadn't been just bad luck or my own mistakes. They'd been actively sabotaging me. That's defamation, Fitzgerald sputtered. You can't prove. Patricia produced another folder. We can, actually. The credit agencies were very helpful once we explained the situation. Identity theft and fraud charges can be added to the existing charges. You destroyed my credit to make me look like an unfit mother. My voice shook with rage I'd been suppressing for weeks. My father's mask finally slipped. You needed to learn consequences, running off with that man, divorcing when things got tough, playing victim instead of taking responsibility. Robert Fitzgerald warned, but my father was beyond caring. We gave you everything. The best schools opportunities, connections, and you threw it all away to become a nurse of all things, wiping bedpans instead of joining the family business. Then you couldn't even keep a simple marriage together. Because Richard and I weren't compatible, I shot back. Because we married too young, trying to please you. Excuses, my mother hissed. Always excuses with you. We tried to save Emma from your weakness to raise her properly. By breaking her leg and laughing while she cried. Jake slammed his hand on the table. She fell from a tree. We didn't break anything. No, you just refused her medical care, forced her to walk miles on a fracture, and filmed her suffering for your sick entertainment, Detective Santos said coolly. Then you conspired to use that manufactured evidence to steal custody. It wasn't stealing, Jake insisted. It was saving her from becoming soft and pathetic like me, I finished. Say it, Jake. You think I'm pathetic because I show emotion, because I protect my child, because I don't worship at the altar of Morrison family cruelty. You're twisting everything, my mother said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. We love Emma. Everything we did was out of love. No, I said firmly. You love control. You love power. You love the image of the perfect family more than the actual people in it. That's not love, that's possession. My father stood abruptly. Enough. If you won't be reasonable, we'll let the courts decide. No jury will convict grandparents for caring too much. Sit down, Robert, Fitzgerald commanded with surprising authority. You're making things worse. But my father was beyond reason. She's destroyed this family, turned everyone against us, even Linda, my own sister, spreading lies about things that happened decades ago. You mean the truth about how you denied her medical care until she became permanently disabled? I asked, just like you tried to do to Emma. Linda's back problems were her own fault. Just like Emma's broken leg was somehow her fault for climbing a tree like a normal child. The room erupted. My mother shrieked about ungrateful daughters. Jake ranted about soft generations and participation trophies. My father thundered about respect and family loyalty. Their lawyers tried desperately to restore order. Through it all, I sat quietly watching the people who raised me reveal their true selves. Not the polished, successful family they presented to the world, but angry, entitled individuals who viewed love as control and pain as pedagogy. Finally, Ellen stood. I think we've heard enough. Our position remains unchanged. All criminal charges stand. The protective order remains in place. Any attempt at contact with Julie or Emma will result in immediate arrest. Furthermore, Patricia added, the hospital is prepared to testify about Mr. Morrison's pattern of interfering with medical care for family members. We have documentation going back 12 years. Detective Santos delivered the final blow. Mr. Jake Morrison, based on new evidence uncovered during our investigation, you're under arrest for cyberstalking and harassment. What? Jake jumped up, but two officers who'd been waiting outside entered immediately. The videos, the social media posts, the text messages to colleagues trying to damage Julie's professional reputation. Detective Santos listed as the officers cuffed him. Your digital footprint tells quite a story. My mother reached for Jake, but the officers were already leading him away. His arrest in front of everyone, the humiliation of it, seemed to break something in her. This is your fault, she whispered to me. You've ruined everything. No, Mom. You ruined everything the moment you chose pride over Emma's well-being. You watched a child suffer and felt nothing but inconvenience. That's not my fault. That's who you are. My father grabbed my mother's arm. We're leaving. Fitzgerald fixed this. But even their high-powered lawyer looked defeated. Mr. Morrison, I strongly advise you to consider a plea deal. The evidence against you is overwhelming. They stormed out, my mother's heels clicking sharply against the floor, my father's face purple with rage. I knew they'd continue fighting, throwing money at lawyers trying to spin the narrative. But something fundamental had shifted. You did great, Ellen said quietly as we watched them go. That couldn't have been easy. It was necessary, I replied, though my hands shook with delayed reaction. Emma needed me to stand up to them. I needed to stand up to them. Patricia squeezed my shoulder. Your daughter is lucky to have you. Not everyone finds the strength to break these cycles. As I left the law office, I felt lighter, despite the heavy confrontation. The family I'd grown up in was effectively dead, but from its ashes, we were building something better. Something based on real love protection and the radical idea that children shouldn't suffer for adult principles. Sarah texted that Emma was doing great teaching her class some basic origami. The normalcy of it, the simple joy of a child being a child without fear, brought tears to my eyes. The confrontation had revealed the truth in all its ugly glory. They hadn't been trying to save Emma. They'd been trying to break her, to mold her into their image of strength through suffering. But real strength, I'd learned, came from protecting the vulnerable, admitting mistakes, and choosing love over legacy. The war with my family wasn't over, but this battle was won. And for the first time since that terrible Sunday afternoon, I truly believed we'd emerge victorious. The news of Jake's arrest spread through our social circles like wildfire. Within hours, my phone buzzed with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly remembering instances where they'd witnessed my family's behavior but hadn't spoken up. The most surprising call came from Margaret Chen, Jake's former boss at his first marketing job 5 years ago. "Julie, I heard about what's happening. I need you to know that Jake was let go from our company for creating hostile situations with female colleagues. We kept it quiet to avoid lawsuits, but when I saw he'd been arrested for harassment, I felt I should reach out." He told everyone he left for a better opportunity, I said, stunned. That was the story we agreed on to avoid litigation, but there were 3 separate complaints about him filming female coworkers without consent and making degrading comments about their weakness. I have documentation if it helps your case. Each revelation felt like another piece of a puzzle I'd been too close to see. Jake hadn't just developed these behaviors recently. He'd been this way for years, enabled by our parents' worldview that cruelty built character. Ellen called the next morning with significant news. Jake's bail has been revoked. Turns out he violated the protective order by creating fake social media accounts to harass you and Sarah. Digital forensics traced them back to his devices. He was still harassing us even after being arrested. Compulsively, he couldn't seem to stop himself from posting about weak women destroying strong men and making veiled threats. The judge was not amused. Meanwhile, the criminal case against my parents was gaining momentum. The prosecutor, ADA Jennifer Walsh, met with me to discuss trial strategy. "Your father's attempt to maintain control is actually working against him," she explained. "He's been contacting witnesses trying to influence their testimony. That's witness tampering, and we have recordings of several attempts. He's that desperate. He's that arrogant. He genuinely believes he can talk his way out of this, that rules don't apply to Robert Morrison." The irony wasn't lost on me. My father, who'd spent my childhood preaching about consequences and accountability, couldn't accept any for himself. The real turning point came through an unexpected source. 3 weeks after the confrontation, a package arrived at my apartment with no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note in shaky handwriting. "Your mother wasn't always this way. Maybe understanding how she got here will help. Someone who remembers." The drive contained old home videos from the 1970s and early 1980s, showing my mother as a young woman. In them, she was vibrant, laughing, openly affectionate with baby me and toddler Jake. Most striking was footage of her standing up to my father when he tried to deny me medical care for an ear infection. "She's burning with fever. Robert, I don't care what your mother says about natural immunity. We're going to the doctor now." Young Mom had fought for me. Somewhere along the way, that woman had disappeared, replaced by someone who watched her granddaughter suffer without compassion. I showed the videos to Dr. Kim during my own therapy session. I'd started seeing her to process the trauma of recent events. "It's not uncommon," she explained. "Years of emotional manipulation can fundamentally change someone. Your mother likely learned that opposing your father came with consequences, so she adapted by adopting his worldview. But she had a choice," I insisted. "She could have protected Emma." Yes, she did have a choice, and she chose wrong. Understanding how someone became harmful doesn't excuse the harm they cause. The videos had another unexpected effect. When the prosecutor presented them during a pre-trial hearing, showing the stark contrast between who my mother had been and who she'd become, her carefully maintained composure cracked. She began sobbing in court, the tears seeming to surprise her as much as anyone. But when the judge asked if she wanted to make a statement, she still defended my father. "Everything we did was for Emma's own good," she insisted through tears. "Children today are too soft." The judge's expression remained unmoved. Mrs. Morrison's soft children don't end up in surgery with pins in their legs because adults denied them medical care. Public opinion had shifted dramatically. What started as local gossip had caught media attention. Prominent business family accused of child endangerment. The stories focused on the pattern of behavior, the conspiracy to gain custody, and most damningly the videos of Emma suffering while Jake laughed. My father's business began hemorrhaging clients. Several major contracts were quietly terminated. The country club asked him to resign his board position. The social standing they'd valued above all else crumbled within weeks. Richard had been true to his word about being more present. He'd taken a position with his company's local office and established a regular schedule with Emma. Watching them work on a puzzle together, I saw glimpses of the father he could have been all along. "I've been thinking," he said one evening after Emma had hobbled to bed, "about testifying, about telling the court how your parents pressured us during our marriage, how they undermined you constantly." "You don't have to get involved." "Yes, I do. They convinced me you were too emotional, too demanding. I believed them instead of seeing how they were manipulating both of us. I owe you and Emma the truth." Sarah had become a regular fixture in our lives, joining us for weekly dinners and helping Emma with school projects. Her relationship with Jake had inadvertently saved Emma from worse injury, and that irony wasn't lost on any of us. "I keep thinking," she said one evening, "about all the red flags I missed. The way he talked about women, about you specifically. I should have run sooner." "You spoke up when it mattered most," I reminded her. "That's what counts." The tables had truly turned when my father's lawyer contacted Ellen about a plea deal. The witness tampering charges, combined with the child endangerment and breaking and entering, meant he faced significant jail time if convicted. "They want to plead to lesser charges with probation and community service," Ellen told me. "No jail time for your parents' minimum security for Jake." "What do you think?" "Trials are unpredictable. This guarantees they're convicted felons banned from contacting you or Emma and on probation for years. Any violation sends them straight to jail." I thought about Emma, who'd have to testify if we went to trial, about reliving that day in court being cross-examined by defense attorneys who'd try to minimize her pain. What about restitution? Full medical costs therapy for both of you and a substantial punitive payment. Plus, they'd have to complete extensive psychological counseling and parenting classes. Even though Emma isn't their child, the judge is particularly interested in ensuring they understand why their actions were harmful before they're allowed around any other grandchildren in the future. The final piece of the table's turning came from an unexpected source, my grandmother's estate lawyer. He'd been reviewing old documents and discovered something significant. "Your grandmother left a sealed letter to be delivered when Robert has learned humility. I believe current circumstances qualify." The letter, written in my grandmother's careful script, was devastating in its prescience. "I fear I failed Robert by never letting him experience true consequences for his actions. I watched him bully his sisters dismiss their pain-demand obedience instead of earning respect. I told myself he'd grow out of it, that strength would temper with wisdom. I was wrong. If you're reading this, he's likely hurt someone badly enough that even money and influence can't fix it. Know that this pattern started with my own failures as his mother. Don't let it continue to the next generation." My father's arrest photo had shown a man stunned that consequences had finally caught up with him. But reading his own mother's words, acknowledging her role in creating him, might have been the first true consequence he'd ever faced. Emma's cast came off after 8 weeks, revealing a pale but healing leg. Physical therapy was painful, but she attacked it with determination, motivated by the promise of returning to dance classes. "I'm stronger now, right, Mom?" she asked after a particularly difficult session. "You've always been strong, baby. Now you just know it too." The tables hadn't just turned legally. The family narrative my parents had controlled for so long had been rewritten. Where they'd preached strength through suffering, we'd shown strength through protecting each other. Where they'd demanded silence and compliance, we'd found power in speaking truth. Their fall from grace was swift and public, but the rise of our new family, chosen supportive and genuinely loving, was the real victory. Emma would grow up knowing she deserved protection, that pain wasn't pedagogy, and that real love never demands suffering as proof of strength. The Morrison family legacy of control and cruelty would end with us. That was the ultimate reversal, taking their name and redefining it through acts of courage, compassion, and the revolutionary idea that children should be cherished, not conquered. Jake's arrest video went viral before any of us could have predicted it. Someone in the law office building had filmed him being led out in handcuffs, ranting about weak women and soft society. Within 24 hours, it had millions of views and thousands of comments connecting it to his earlier video of Emma's suffering. The internet investigators worked faster than any detective. They found every cruel post, every mocking comment, every instance where Jake had publicly bullied someone for showing vulnerability. Former girlfriends came forward with stories. College classmates shared incidents. His carefully curated image of success crumbled tweet by tweet. "Mom kids at school are talking about Uncle Jake," Emma said quietly one morning. "They saw the videos." How does that make you feel? Weird, but also relieved, like everyone finally sees what I already knew. The local news picked up the story first. Morrison family scandal when tough love becomes child abuse. They interviewed child development experts who explained how forcing injured children to walk it off could cause lasting physical and psychological damage. My father tried to control the narrative by calling a press conference at his office. Ellen and I watched the live stream in horrified fascination as he stood before reporters, still radiating authority despite his circumstances. "This is a private family matter that has been blown out of proportion by a vindictive daughter," he began. "We've always believed in raising strong, capable children. If that's now a crime, then society has truly lost its way." The questions from reporters were brutal. "Mr. Morrison, how do you explain the video of your granddaughter walking on a broken leg while your son films and laughs? Children exaggerate injuries for attention. We were teaching her resilience. Medical records show she required surgery with pins. Are you calling the surgeons liars?" "I'm saying my daughter has a pattern of overreacting and seeking drama." "What about the testimony from your sister Linda about her permanent disability after you denied her medical care?" His face reddened. "Linda has always been jealous of my success. These accusations from decades ago are simply..." "What about the 3 other family members who've come forward with similar stories?" The press conference devolved quickly. My father stormed off when a reporter asked about the witness tampering charges, but the damage was done. Every major outlet ran clips of him dismissing Emma's injury, looking callous and out of touch. My mother attempted damage control through her social circles, but that backfired spectacularly. Someone leaked her emails to other country club members where she called Emma dramatic and me unstable, while asking them to provide character references for court. The club's response was swift. Not only did they refuse, but several members came forward with their own stories about the Morrison family. "I once saw Robert berate a waiter until the young man cried, then mock him for being emotional," one member told reporters. "We all knew to keep our children away from Jake at family events. He had a cruel streak, even as a teenager." The leaked emails revealed something else: my mother's desperate attempts to maintain appearances while everything crumbled. She'd lied to friends about why they hadn't seen Emma lately, claiming we were traveling. She'd told others I was in a mental health facility. The web of deception showed how deeply image mattered more than truth. Sarah's public statement added another layer to the exposure. She gave one interview calm and professional that devastated Jake's remaining defenders. "I'm a mandated reporter. When I saw Emma's injury, I had a legal and moral obligation to act. The fact that her own family prevented me from calling 911 tells you everything about their priorities. They chose their theater tickets over a child's well-being." The interview clip of Sarah saying they chose theater tickets over a child's well-being became a viral soundbite, spawning memes and discussions about toxic family dynamics. My workplace rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. The hospital where I worked released a statement praising my professionalism and dedication. Several doctors I'd worked with wrote op-eds about recognizing medical neglect and the importance of advocating for children. Dr. Martinez, a pediatric surgeon, was particularly vocal. Nurse Morrison brings the same fierce advocacy for her patients that she showed for her daughter. The idea that seeking medical care for an obvious fracture is overreacting belongs in the dark ages, not modern society. Emma's school took protective measures, but they couldn't shield her entirely from the attention. Some parents whispered at pickup. Some kids asked intrusive questions. But something beautiful happened too. Her community rallied around her. Her dance teacher created a special routine for students recovering from injuries, inspired by Emma's determination. Her art teacher displayed her cast drawings in a show about resilience. Her classmates signed a giant card saying, "Real strength is asking for help when you need it." "I'm kind of famous," Emma said one day with a mix of pride and discomfort. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't like that everyone knows about the worst day of my life. But I like that Uncle Jake can't hurt other kids now because everyone sees who he really is." The public exposure reached a crescendo when a documentary filmmaker contacted us. She was creating a series about family abuse disguised as traditional values, and our story exemplified the pattern. "I'm not interested in sensationalizing," she assured me. "I want to explore how harmful behavior gets normalized in families passed down through generations until someone finally breaks the cycle." Ellen advised careful consideration. This could help other families recognize these patterns, but it also means reliving everything on camera. I left the decision to Emma. She thought for days before answering. "Will it help other kids whose families hurt them but pretend it's normal?" "It might," I said honestly. "Then yes, because what if there's another kid out there whose grandpa won't let them go to the doctor? Maybe they'll see our story and know it's not okay." My parents' business completely collapsed within 2 months. Major clients pulled contracts, employees quit. The empire my father had built on stepping on others crumbled when people saw who he truly was. Jake lost more than his job. His professional reputation was destroyed. Marketing firms wouldn't touch him. His social media presence, once his pride became a liability, no amount of reputation management could fix. He'd built his identity on public perception, and the public had rendered its verdict. The Morrison family name, once synonymous with success and influence in our city, became shorthand for abuse disguised as tough love. Psychology professors used our case in lectures. Parenting groups discussed it as a cautionary tale. Medical schools included it in training about recognizing abuse. But the most powerful exposure came from within the family. Cousins I barely knew reached out with their own stories. My father's brother, estranged for 20 years, called to say he'd cut contact specifically because of how my parents treated their children. "I told Robert when you were 10 that his methods would backfire someday," Uncle Stephen said. "He laughed and said weak people always resent the strong. I'm sorry I didn't do more to protect you and Jake from him." "Jake became him," I pointed out. "Jake never had a chance. Robert molded him from birth to be his successor. You were lucky in a twisted way to be dismissed as just a girl. It let you maintain some independent thought." The public exposure served a purpose beyond justice. It started conversations in countless families about where the line exists between building resilience and causing harm. Parents examined their own behaviors. Grandparents questioned long-held beliefs about toughening up children. Emma received letters from other kids who'd experienced similar situations. We read them together, these stories of children forced to endure pain, to prove strength, dismissed when they asked for help, mocked for showing vulnerability. "We're not alone," Emma said wonderingly. "All these kids went through what I did. And now their parents know it's not okay, because you were brave enough to let people see what happened." The exposure phase was ending as legal proceedings moved forward. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict decisively. My parents and Jake would face legal consequences, but they'd already lost what mattered most to them: their reputation, their influence, their ability to hurt others while claiming righteousness. As I tucked Emma in one night, she asked, "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa understand now why what they did was wrong?" I thought about my father's press conference, my mother's leaked emails, Jake's complete lack of accountability, even in handcuffs. I don't know, baby. Some people never admit they're wrong, even when everyone else can see it clearly. But what matters is that they can't hurt you anymore, and their story becomes a warning to others. Like a cautionary tale. Exactly like that. Sometimes the best thing that comes from bad experiences is preventing them from happening to someone else. The public exposure had stripped away every pretense, every excuse, every justification my family had hidden behind. In the harsh light of public scrutiny, their traditional values were revealed as simple cruelty, their strength as mere bullying, their love as nothing more than control. And in that same light, our truth shone through a mother who fought for her child, a girl who survived and thrived despite trauma, and a new definition of family that prioritized protection over perception. The exposure had cost them everything, but it had given us something precious: validation, support, and the knowledge that speaking truth to power can create real change. The guilty pleas came on a gray Thursday morning in November. My parents and Jake, flanked by their diminished legal team, stood before Judge Patricia Williams to admit their crimes. The courthouse was packed with reporters, family members, and curious onlookers who'd followed the saga. I sat in the front row with Ellen, close enough to see my father's hands shake as he gripped the defendant's table. The man who'd terrorized our family with his need for control couldn't control his own trembling. Robert Morrison, you are charged with child endangerment, witness tampering, and breaking and entering. How do you plead? My father's voice, once booming with authority, came out as barely a whisper. Guilty, Your Honor. The word seemed to physically pain him. This was a man who'd never admitted fault in his life, forced by circumstances to speak the truth in open court. My mother followed, pleading guilty to child endangerment and conspiracy charges. She wept throughout the careful makeup she'd applied, running in streams down her face. The image-conscious woman who'd prioritized appearances over Emma's well-being now faced her worst nightmare: public humiliation, with no way to spin the narrative. Jake's plea was the most dramatic. As he admitted to harassment, child endangerment, and cyber stalking, his voice cracked. Guilty, he said, then added desperately, but I was just trying to help my family. Mr. Morrison, Judge Williams cut him off sharply. Save your explanations for your present-tensing statement. Today we're only concerned with your plea. The sentencing was set for 6 weeks later, allowing time for victim impact statements and pre-sentencing reports. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Ellen guided us quickly to a waiting car. That's the hardest part done, she assured me, but I knew better. Watching my family formally admit their guilt was just one milestone in a longer journey. The financial collapse followed swiftly. With criminal convictions pending, my father's remaining business partners fled. The company he'd built over 30 years dissolved almost overnight. Assets were frozen pending civil lawsuits from former employees who'd come forward with their own stories of abuse. My mother's social standing evaporated completely. The charitable boards she'd sat on requested her immediate resignation. The country club formally revoked their membership. Friends of decades crossed the street to avoid her. I heard about their situation through Linda, who, despite everything, checked on them occasionally. They're having to sell the house, she told me over coffee. Robert's too proud to declare bankruptcy, but they're liquidating everything. Your mother had to sell her jewelry collection. Do you feel sorry for them? I asked, genuinely curious about my own lack of sympathy. I feel sorry for who they could have been, Linda said thoughtfully. If Robert had used his strength to protect instead of dominate, if your mother had kept that spark of defiance I remember from her youth, they had every advantage in life and chose to use it for cruelty. Jake's collapse was perhaps the most complete. Unable to find legitimate employment, he'd moved back in with our parents just as they were losing their home. His online presence, once his pride, became a gathering place for people sharing stories of his bullying behavior going back years. His ex-girlfriend Melissa found Sarah and me through social media wanting to share her story. Over dinner, she revealed a pattern we'd suspected but couldn't prove. "He filmed everything," Melissa said quietly. "Intimate moments, arguments, me crying after my dad died. He said he was documenting life, but really he was collecting ammunition. When I tried to break up with him, he threatened to release edited videos that made me look unstable." "Did you go to the police?" Sarah asked. "With what proof? He was careful. But when I saw Emma's video, I recognized the pattern immediately. That's when I knew I had to speak up." Melissa had already given her statement to prosecutors. Her testimony would be part of the sentencing hearing, showing Jake's pattern extended far beyond our family. The psychological evaluations ordered by the court revealed what we'd long suspected. My father showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder with sadistic tendencies. My mother displayed dependent personality traits that had worsened over years of marriage. Jake scored high on assessments for antisocial behavior. In layman's terms, the prosecutor explained, "Your father is clinically incapable of accepting fault. Your mother has so thoroughly adopted his worldview that she's lost her own identity. And Jake shows signs of following directly in your father's footsteps with an added layer of technological savvy that makes him particularly dangerous." The reports would factor into sentencing, but offered little comfort. Understanding the psychology behind their behavior didn't undo Emma's pain or years of family trauma. Emma continued physical therapy, progressing remarkably well. Her limp was barely noticeable most days, though weather changes brought aches that reminded us how close she'd come to permanent damage. "I'm glad I'm getting better," she told her therapist, "but sometimes I feel guilty that I'm okay when other kids Grandpa hurt aren't." The therapist, Dr. Chen, handled it beautifully. "Survivor's guilt is common, Emma, but your recovery doesn't take away from their pain. If anything, it shows that healing is possible." Richard had proven himself a changed man through all of this. He'd taken Emma to every therapy appointment when I had work, never complaining about the disruption to his schedule. He'd even started his own therapy to address how he'd failed to protect Emma from my family. "I let your parents convince me you were overreacting about everything," he admitted during one family counseling session. "I should have trusted you, should have seen how they undermined you constantly." "We both made mistakes," I acknowledged. "What matters is we're doing better now." Our divorce had been finalized just as Emma turned 11, but this crisis had forged a different kind of partnership. We'd never reconcile romantically, but we'd become true co-parents, united in protecting our daughter. The extended family collapse continued as more relatives chose sides. Some, thoroughly under my parents' influence, cut contact with us entirely. Others, freed by our speaking out, shared their own stories of Morrison family abuse. My cousin David flew in from Portland specifically to testify at sentencing. He'd been Jake's favorite target growing up, mocked relentlessly for his stutter and anxiety. "Jake once locked me in a closet during a panic attack because he thought it would cure me," David told prosecutors. "Uncle Robert laughed when he found out, said it was good thinking. I was 8 years old." These stories painted a picture of generational dysfunction that my parents had perfected and tried to pass on. The miracle wasn't that Emma got hurt, it was that any of us survived intact enough to break the cycle. 3 weeks before sentencing, my mother attempted contact through her sister. Aunt Rebecca called late one evening, her voice careful. "Julie, I have a message from your mother. She wants you to know she's sorry." "Sorry she got caught." I think she might actually mean it. She's been different since the plea hearing. Quieter. She asked me to tell you she understands if you never forgive her, but she needed you to know." I thought about the young mother in those videos fighting to get me medical care. Tell her that sorry doesn't undo the damage, but I hope she gets help. My father predictably made no such attempts at apology. According to Linda, he spent his days raging about the injustice of it all, planning appeals he couldn't afford, writing letters to former associates that went unanswered. The house sold below market value in a rushed sale. They moved into a small apartment in a neighborhood my father had once called beneath us. The luxury cars were repossessed. The country club membership that had defined their social life was a memory. But the real collapse wasn't financial. It was the complete destruction of everything they'd built their identity on. Without money, status, and fear to wield as weapons, they were just elderly people facing the consequences of a lifetime of cruelty. Jake attempted one last manipulation before sentencing. A letter arrived at my workplace forwarded through multiple channels to avoid the protective order. In it, he blamed me for everything: his arrest, his unemployment, the family's destruction. "You always were jealous of my success," he wrote. "Now you've destroyed everything because you couldn't handle Emma learning some discipline. I hope you're satisfied." Even facing prison, he couldn't accept responsibility. The evaluation was right. He was following directly in our father's footsteps, unable to see fault in himself, even as his world burned around him. Ellen advised me not to respond, but I kept the letter. It would be part of my victim impact statement showing that even now they felt they were the victims. The week before sentencing, Emma asked to visit the tree where she'd fallen. We returned to my parents' former home, now bearing a "sold" sign. The new owners hadn't moved in yet, so we stood at the fence, looking at the oak that had started everything. "It's smaller than I remembered," Emma said quietly. "Things often are when we face them again. I used to have nightmares about falling, but now it just looks like a regular tree." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "I'm glad I fell." "Emma, honey, you don't have to be glad you got hurt." "No, I am. Because if I hadn't fallen, if they'd helped me right away, we might never have known how mean they really were. They might have gotten custody someday, and then what would have happened?" Her insight was heartbreaking and profound, a 12-year-old understanding that sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal the truth about people we trust. As we drove away from the house for the last time, Emma asked, "Do you think they'll change in jail?" "I don't know, baby. Change has to come from admitting you were wrong first, and some people never get there." "That's sad," she said simply. "They're going to be lonely." "Yes," I agreed. "They are." The collapse was complete. From prominent family to cautionary tale, from social leaders to social pariahs, from controlling our lives to losing control of their own. They'd built an empire on cruelty and watched it crumble, when one 12-year-old girl's pain exposed the foundation of lies it stood on. But from that collapse came our rise. Emma walking without pain, our chosen family of supporters growing stronger, the truth finally spoken and believed. Sometimes things need to fall apart completely before they can be rebuilt into something better. The Morrison legacy of abuse would end with them. Our legacy would be one of healing truth and the courage to protect those who need protecting. The collapse was their ending, but it was our beginning. Sentencing day arrived with unexpected December snow, blanketing the courthouse steps in pristine white that seemed to mock the ugly truths about to be laid bare inside. Emma had chosen to deliver her victim impact statement in person, a decision that filled me with both pride and worry. "You don't have to do this," I reminded her one last time as we walked through security. "I know, but I need to. They need to hear what they did from me, not just from adults talking about me." Judge Williams' courtroom was packed again. My parents and Jake sat at separate defendant tables, their legal teams much reduced. My father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. My mother kept dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Jake slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. The prosecutor began with a summary of facts that sounded even worse laid out in clinical detail. The timeline of Emma's injury and their refusal of care, the conspiracy to gain custody, the pattern of abuse spanning generations. "Your Honor," Ada Walsh concluded, "the defendants didn't just endanger one child. They perpetuated a system of abuse that affected dozens of family members over decades. The court has an opportunity to send a clear message that wealth and status don't excuse child endangerment. The defense attorneys made their arguments, each trying to minimize their client's actions. My father's lawyer emphasized his business success and community contributions. My mother's painted her as a victim of my father's influence. Jake's blamed his upbringing and asked for leniency given his age. Then came the victim impact statements. Linda went first, leaning heavily on her cane as she approached the podium. "Your Honor, I've used this cane for 15 years because my brother convinced me that seeking immediate medical care was weakness. I'll never run again. Never dance at my daughter's wedding without pain. Robert didn't just hurt me physically. He stole my trust in my own judgment about my body." David followed his stutter, more pronounced with nerves. Jake Morrison tortured me throughout my childhood, always with Robert and Patricia's approval. They called it toughening me up. I call it abuse. I still have panic attacks in small spaces because of what they did. Sarah spoke about the trauma of witnessing Emma's pain and being prevented from helping. As a teacher, I'm trained to protect children. The defendants made me complicit in a child's suffering by physically stopping me from calling for help. That image haunts me. Then it was Emma's turn. I walked her to the podium, adjusting the microphone for her height. She looked so small but stood straight, her recovered leg bearing weight equally with the other. "I wrote this myself," she began, her voice clear, "because I wanted to use my own words, not grown-up words someone gave me." She looked directly at my parents and Jake. "You were supposed to love me. Grandparents are supposed to give hugs and cookies and make you feel safe. Uncle Jake was supposed to be fun and protect me from bullies, not be one." Her voice trembled but didn't break. "When I fell from the tree, I was so scared. My leg hurt worse than anything I'd ever felt. I needed help and you laughed. You made me walk when I could barely stand. You took videos of me crying and thought it was funny. But the worst part wasn't the pain. It was that you didn't care. You saw me throwing up from hurt and you cared more about theater tickets. You watched me cry and told me I was weak. You're my family and you picked being mean over helping me." She paused, gathering herself. "I have nightmares sometimes, not about falling from the tree, but about calling for help and nobody coming. Because of you, I learned that sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. I'm getting better. My leg works again, mostly. I have good people now who actually love me. But I'll always remember that you chose to hurt me. And I want the judge to know that kids remember everything. We remember who helped us and who hurt us. And you hurt me on purpose. I don't want you to hurt other kids, so please, judge, make sure they can't." She stepped down to complete silence. Several people in the gallery were crying. Jake had his head in his hands. My mother sobbed openly. My father's mask had finally cracked his face, showing something that might have been shame. I gave my own statement, focusing on the broader pattern of abuse and the ongoing impact on our lives. Emma still asks sometimes if she did something wrong to make them not love her. No child should question their worth because adults chose cruelty over compassion. Finally, Judge Williams offered the defendants the opportunity to speak before sentencing. Jake went first, standing unsteadily. I'm sorry. I see now that what I thought was humor was cruel. What I thought was strength was bullying. I became someone I don't recognize, and I'm deeply ashamed. Emma, I'm sorry. You deserved better from your uncle. It seemed genuine, but I'd learned not to trust Morrison family performances. My mother stood next, gripping the table for support. I failed as a grandmother. I failed as a mother. Somewhere along the way, I lost myself and became someone who could watch a child suffer and feel annoyed instead of alarmed. I'm sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am deeply, truly sorry. My father rose last. For a moment, he stood silent, his mouth opening and closing without words. Then, I was wrong. 3 words, the 3 words Robert Morrison had never spoken in his life. I believed hardship built character. I believed showing weakness invited defeat. I believed many things that I see now were just excuses for cruelty. I destroyed my family. I hurt a child who trusted me. I was wrong. He sat heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. Judge Williams took her time before pronouncing sentence. I've presided over many family violence cases. What makes this one particularly troubling is the systematic nature of the abuse passed down through generations like a toxic inheritance. Mr. Robert Morrison, your position as family patriarch gave you power, and you used it to terrorize and control. The court sentences you to 18 months in state prison, followed by 5 years probation. You will complete anger management and parenting classes. You are barred from any contact with the victims without their explicit consent. My father nodded, accepting what he couldn't control. Mrs. Patricia Morrison, your failure to protect your granddaughter is inexcusable. However, the court recognizes the psychological evaluation showing your diminished capacity for independent decision-making. You are sentenced to 6 months in county jail with work release privileges, followed by 5 years probation. Mandatory therapy and parenting classes are required. My mother whispered, "Thank you, Your Honor." Mr. Jake Morrison, you're young enough to change course if you choose to. Your genuine remorse today is noted, but it doesn't erase your actions. 18 months in state prison, 5 years probation, mandatory therapy, and you must register as a cyber harassment offender. You're banned from social media for the duration of your probation. Jake nodded, tears streaming down his face. Additionally, all 3 defendants will pay full restitution for medical costs, therapy, and punitive damages to be determined in civil proceedings. The gavel came down with finality. It was over. As court officers prepared to take them into custody, my mother looked at me pleadingly. I held her gaze for a moment, then looked away. Forgiveness might come someday, but not today. Emma tugged my hand. "Can we go home now?" "Yes, baby, we can go home." Outside, the snow continued falling, covering the harsh edges of the world in soft white. Emma stuck out her tongue to catch snowflakes, laughing when they melted. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Yeah, I said what I needed to say. They heard me. That's all I wanted." The resolution wasn't just in the sentences handed down, though justice had been served. It was in Emma's ability to speak her truth, in our family's exposed patterns finally breaking, in the support system we'd built from the ashes of what we'd lost. That evening, we had dinner with our chosen family, Richard, Sarah, Marcus, Linda, David, and others who'd stood by us. Emma was animated, talking about returning to dance class after the new year. "I want to choreograph a piece about being strong," she announced, "but like real strong. Not fake strong like Grandpa talked about. Strong like asking for help when you need it and protecting people who can't protect themselves." "That sounds beautiful," Sarah said. "I'd love to see it when you're done." As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she asked one more question. "Do you think they'll actually change in prison?" "I don't know. Change is hard, especially when you've been one way your whole life. But maybe being forced to face consequences will help them see things differently." "I hope so," she said drowsily. "Not for us, but for them. It must be lonely being that mean all the time." Her compassion astounded me. After everything, she could still hope for their redemption even while protecting herself from their harm. The resolution was complete but not neat. There would be appeals, civil suits, ongoing therapy, and the slow work of healing. Some family relationships were severed forever. Others, like with Linda and David, grew stronger through shared truth. My parents and Jake would serve their time. What they did with it, whether they used it for genuine reflection or bitter resentment, was their choice. We'd moved beyond needing their recognition or apology. Our resolution came from within, from speaking truth, protecting each other, and building a life defined by love rather than control. The Morrison family cycle of abuse had been exposed, prosecuted, and punished. But more importantly, it had been broken. Emma would grow up knowing her worth wasn't determined by her ability to endure pain, but by her courage to seek help when she needed it. That was our resolution, not just an ending, but a new beginning, built on the radical idea that children deserve protection, that pain isn't pedagogical, and that real strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. The snow continued falling outside, blanketing our city in fresh white. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight we were safe, we were together, and we were free. The resolution was complete. 6 months after sentencing, our lives had settled into a new rhythm. Emma's physical therapy had ended with full recovery, though she proudly kept her purple cast in her closet as a reminder of her strength. The nightmares had faded to occasional bad dreams, manageable with the coping strategies Dr. Kim had taught her. Our apartment had transformed from a place of struggle to a genuine home. Richard's increased involvement meant shared expenses and less financial stress. He'd taken Emma to father-daughter dance classes, their relationship blooming in ways the divorce had prevented before. "Dad actually listens now," Emma told me after one of their weekends together. Like really listens, not just waiting for his turn to talk. Sarah had become Aunt Sarah, a regular presence at family dinners and Emma's biggest cheerleader at dance recitals. Her relationship with Jake had brought her into our lives, but she'd stayed because of genuine love for Emma and friendship with me. "I've started talking about this in my classroom," she told me over coffee. "Age-appropriate discussions about bodily autonomy and trusting your instincts. If my students learn nothing else, they'll know their pain is valid and deserving of care." The ripple effects of our story continued spreading. The documentary had aired nationally, sparking conversations about family abuse disguised as traditional values. I receive messages daily from parents reconsidering their approach, from adults processing their own childhood trauma, from kids finding courage to speak up. Marcus had been promoted to EMT supervisor partly because of his exemplary handling of Emma's case. "I've made it mandatory training," he said. "How to recognize when family members are preventing medical care. Your case is saving other kids, Julie." My work at the hospital had evolved too. I'd been invited to join a committee developing protocols for identifying and responding to medical neglect. My supervisor had nominated me for a leadership position in the patient advocacy program. "Your experience gives you unique insight," she explained. "You understand the subtle signs others might miss." I'd also started speaking at nursing schools, sharing our story to help future healthcare workers recognize when patients need advocates. Linda had become a regular part of our lives, her own healing journey intertwined with ours. She'd started a support group for family members affected by medical neglect, meeting monthly at the community center. 23 members and growing, she told me proudly. Turns out Robert's impact spread far wider than we knew, but so did his downfall. People feel free to speak now. Jake had written from prison twice. The first letter was full of self-pity and blame. The second, arriving 3 months later, showed genuine reflection. He'd enrolled in college courses and therapy programs, working to understand how he'd become someone capable of hurting children for entertainment. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote. "I just want you to know I'm trying to become someone Emma wouldn't need protection from. Maybe someday, years from now, I can be the uncle she deserved from the start." I saved the letter, but didn't respond. Some bridges once burned couldn't be rebuilt, but I hoped for his sake that he'd find a way to live with what he'd done and choose differently going forward. My mother had been released to a halfway house after serving 4 months. According to Rebecca, she'd thrown herself into therapy with surprising dedication. The woman who'd spent decades perfecting a false image was finally examining who she really was beneath it. She'd sent one letter through legal channels respecting the protective order. I wake up every morning seeing Emma's face that day. Not her pain, though that haunts me, but her confusion when we wouldn't help her. She looked at me with such trust, even then, believing Grandma would make it better. And I failed her. I failed you. I failed myself. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now, all of it, and I'm sorry. My father remained in prison unrepentant, according to those who'd encountered him. He'd become a cautionary tale among inmates, the man who'd hurt a child and called it love. His empire was gone, his reputation destroyed, his family scattered. Yet reports suggested he still blamed everyone but himself. But some people never learn, Linda said sadly when discussing him. They'd rather be right than happy, rather be powerful than loved. Robert will die alone, convinced the world wronged him. Emma's 13th birthday approached with excitement rather than dread. She'd planned a small party with friends who'd stood by her through everything, including some who'd shared their own stories of overcoming family trauma. "I want a tree theme," she announced, "because trees can survive broken branches and still grow tall, like us." The metaphor wasn't subtle, but it was perfect. We'd been broken but not destroyed, bent but not beaten. On the morning of her birthday, Emma woke early and found me on the balcony with coffee. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think we would have been this happy if none of it had happened? Like if Grandma and Grandpa had been normal and helped me that day?" I considered the question carefully. We'd have been happy differently, but we wouldn't have known how strong we were. We wouldn't have found our real family. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best changes. "So you're saying falling from the tree was actually good?" "No, baby. Falling and getting hurt was terrible. What they did to you was unforgivable. But how we responded, how we fought for each other, and found people who truly love us, that part was good." She nodded, processing this complex truth. Then, with the resilience that continued to amaze me, she smiled. "Want to help me hang decorations? Aunt Sarah's coming early to help bake the cake." That afternoon, our apartment filled with laughter and love. Richard arrived with an embarrassingly large pile of presents. Sarah brought her famous chocolate cake. Marcus stopped by on his break with a gift card for dance supplies. Linda hobbled in with handmade decorations from her support group members. Even Dr. Kim had sent a card with a note, "Watching you heal and thrive has been one of the great privileges of my career. Happy birthday to a truly remarkable young woman." As Emma blew out her candles, surrounded by people who'd proven their love through action rather than blood, I saw our future clearly. Not perfect, not without challenges, but built on a foundation of truth and genuine care. "What did you wish for?" Sarah asked. Emma grinned. "If I tell you, it won't come true. But I'll say this, it wasn't for me. I've got everything I need." Later, as the party wound down and Emma showed off her dance moves to an appreciative audience, David pulled me aside. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly, "for speaking up, for showing me it was okay to tell the truth about what happened to us. I've started therapy, real therapy, and for the first time in my life, I don't feel broken." "You were never broken," I assured him, "just hurt by people who should have protected you." "Yeah, well, now I'm healing. We all are in our own ways. Even some of the family members who initially sided with Uncle Robert are starting to question things. The truth has a way of spreading once someone's brave enough to speak it first." As evening fell and guests departed, Emma and I cleaned up together. She moved easily, no trace of limp, remaining her recovery complete in ways both physical and emotional. "Best birthday ever," she declared, collapsing on the couch. "Even better than when I was little and thought Grandma and Grandpa loved me." "They might have loved you," I said carefully. "They just loved their ideas about strength and control more. That's their loss, not yours." "I know. I have people who love me for real now, who would never hurt me to prove a point." A knock at the door interrupted our conversation. I found a delivery person with a small package, no return address. Inside was a silver necklace with a tree charm, its branches reaching upward despite a visible crack in the trunk. The note was unsigned, but I recognized my mother's handwriting. "For Emma. May she always grow toward the light, no matter how deep the damage to her roots. Happy birthday." I showed Emma, letting her decide. She studied the necklace thoughtfully. "It's pretty," she said finally, "and I like what it means. Can I keep it but not wear it yet? Maybe someday when I'm ready?" "Of course. You get to decide what role they have in your life, if any." She put the necklace in her jewelry box, neither rejecting nor accepting the overture, just holding space for possibilities while protecting her heart. As I tucked her in that night, a ritual she claimed to be too old for but still secretly loved, she hugged me tighter than usual. "Mom, I'm really glad you fought for me, even when they made you think you were crazy, even when it would have been easier to give in. You saved me." "You saved yourself, baby. You were brave enough to show your pain and ask for help. That's what started everything." "We saved each other then." "Yes," I agreed, kissing her forehead. "We did." The new beginning wasn't a single moment, but a series of choices made daily. Choosing healing over bitterness. Choosing found family over blood loyalty. Choosing to speak truth even when silence would be easier. Our story had become bigger than us, inspiring changes in how schools approached, mandated reporting, how hospitals handled suspected neglect, how families examined their own dynamics. But at its heart, it remained simple. A mother who fought for her daughter, a girl who refused to suffer in silence, and a community that rose up to protect them both. The Morrison family legacy had been rewritten. Where once it stood for power and control, it now represented courage and change. Emma would carry the name forward not as a burden, but as a badge of honor, proof that cycles can be broken and cruelty doesn't have to be inherited. 6 months from now, she'd choreograph that dance piece about strength moving audiences to tears with her interpretation of breaking free from false strength to find real power in vulnerability. A year from now, she'd mentor younger students dealing with family trauma. 5 years from now, she'd write her college essay about falling from a tree and rising from the ashes of a toxic legacy. But tonight she was just 13, safe, loved, and free. The bruises had healed, the nightmares had faded, and the future stretched before us, full of possibility. I stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her settle into sleep. No more checking for sounds of distress, no more fear that someone would hurt her while claiming love. Just peace, hard-won, and carefully guarded. The beginning was new, but it was built on everything we'd survived. We'd been broken and remade, lost and found silenced and given voice. And through it all, we discovered that real family isn't about blood or obligation or maintaining appearances. Real family shows up when you need them. Real family believes your pain. Real family fights for your safety even when it costs them everything. As I turned off the light and headed to my own room, my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. She must have sent it right before falling asleep. "Thank you for being my real family. Love you to the moon and back." I smiled, texting back, "Love you to the stars and beyond. Sweet dreams, my brave girl." The new beginning was here, and it was beautiful. If you or someone you know has experienced family abuse disguised as tough love, please know that your pain is valid and help is available. Children deserve protection, not tests of strength. Thank you for following Emma and Julie's journey. What would you have done in Julie's situation when faced with family who refused to help your injured child? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking and subscribing to hear more stories about families finding strength through truth and love. Share this with someone who might need to hear that choosing protection over perception is always the right choice. Thank you for being part of our community where every child's pain matters and every parent's instinct to protect is honored. Until next time, remember, real strength isn't about enduring pain. It's about having the courage to ask for help when you need it.